Pirate's Most Powerful Villain, Chapter 321-340. Chapter 0321-Scramble for Blueprints. Wait, I really don't know. Rayleigh said helplessly. The person who knew the whereabouts of the 3 ancient weapons was Roger. He knew everything, but no one told him. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other in dismay, not sure what to do. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Wait, Pluto Rayleigh, why do you have Pluto's design drawings in your hand?" That's right. Isn't the blueprint in the hands of the She-Male King? What the hell is going on? Everyone was stunned. Everyone tried their best to compete for the blueprint, but suddenly found that there were actually 2 drawings. She-Male King himself was even more dumbfounded. He looked at Doflamingo suddenly. Could it be that you guys did it? Fur. Doflamingo laughed strangely. You can't talk nonsense. I just follow the order to recover this blueprint. I don't know anything else. But after hearing his words, Ivankov's face sank. I was tricked. No, the dragon was tricked. No matter which one, you must have calculated it. Thinking of this, he immediately felt that it would be better to get rid of the blueprint in his hand as soon as possible. After all, he couldn't predict what follow-up methods were waiting for him. Whitebeard, this is the blueprint I handed to you by Longta. Take it. Ivankov shouted, and then blinked his right eye. Suddenly, a blast of wind blew up, pushing the blueprint and sending it precisely to Whitebeard. Kizaru! Kong Sora yelled. Kizaru made a decisive move, and his hands were held up and down in front of Shang, immediately accumulating a mirror-like light. 8-foot mirror. Mirror projected a beam of light, and at the same time, Kizaru's body was photonized, merged into the golden light, and moved to the front of Whitebeard in an instant. Before he intercepted the flying blueprint, he reached out to grab it. Get the blueprint, half of this Marine's mission is complete. Kizaru follows the middle way. When he can make meritorious deeds, he will not hesitate. However, just as he was about to grab the blueprint, a blue bird collided with it. Kizaru, get out of here! Marco exploded with absolute high speed, and in an instant, spanning a distance of dozens of meters, dragging a blue tail flame, it hit Kizaru's side. Boom! Armament hockey. Kizaru's fluidization was useless, and was knocked away with a single blow. The drawings are ours. Marco succeeded in one blow, immediately recovered from the phoenix form, transformed into a human form, and grabbed the blueprint. But at this time, the earth suddenly shook, and an ancient loud noise came running wildly. The giant elephant, with a pair of tusks on its back, rammed and was extremely fast. Wherever he passed, the ground was dry and cracked, and no one could stop him. Drought Jack! Someone exclaimed. The Kaido pirates have also taken action. Everyone felt something, and all looked up to the sky. I saw a figure falling from the sky. Ha ha ha, Marco, keep the drawings. Kaido's laughter came and crashed in front of Marco. Smoke and dust filled the air, obstructing vision. Marco's face changed, and he found that he was empty, and the drawings suddenly disappeared. Who? He stared, looking around. It's not Kaido, it's not the drought, who is it? The blueprint disappeared suddenly, and the moment Kaido landed and kicked up the dust, the drawing slipped out of his hands. This scene fell into Qin Yang's eyes, and he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. It looks very familiar. Is it a secret fruit? Qin Yang snorted softly, and he waited for the group to fight. At this time, Big Mark stole the blueprints, which would be difficult for him. Immediately, he calculated in his heart and found the location of the other party at once. Fate is long. Qin Yang shook his hand, and suddenly there was a going long chain in his hand, and the next moment, with a swoosh, the long chain threw out and went straight to someone in the crowd. Big Mark was wearing a gray cloak with a very low hood, holding the blueprint in his hand, ready to leave quietly. But at this time, he felt a sharp edge on his back, and he couldn't help but look back, and his heart was split. Damn, how did you find me? He was so frightened that he quickly rolled to the left. Whoosh! The gun of destiny passed through, as if it had shuttled through space, and penetrated the Big Mark's mouth in the long river of destiny. What? Big Mark touched Shang's mouth and found no trauma, but his body suddenly froze. Suddenly, he vomited blood and fell forward. At the same time, the blueprints in his hands suddenly scattered. The drawing. It's mine. The sea giant was the first to react. He was the closest, kicked the person blocking the way, and bent over to grab it. For the blueprints are what I'm waiting to recover. Doflamingo laughed twice, stretched out his right palm, and Vivi moved his 5 fingers. Whoosh whoosh. Immediately, several golden threads were cut through. The sea giant's face changed, and the whole person suddenly sank. At the same time, his right calf had left the body and flew to the side. Impossible. He was shocked. Although he didn't take special precautions, armament hockey was still covering him. However, even so, this attack easily cut his body. You bastard. The sea giant was furious, but he did not give up, and still grabbed the blueprint. However, this momentary delay has already made many people react. The giant elephant turned its direction and charged towards this side. His pair of long tusks directly broke through all obstacles and slammed into the sea giant's mouth. Puff! 2 long fangs pierced through the abdomen of the soldier, and they ran for hundreds of meters against him. Advantage of this opportunity, Kaido burst into laughter, took a vigorous step, and suddenly approached. Only I can afford the blueprints. Ha 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 ha. It all happened so fast that many people didn't understand what was going on. From Qinyang locking on the Big Mark, to Fate Chengqiang hitting the opponent, to the Marines stepping on the blocker to snatch it, to Doflamingo cutting off the opponent's right leg, and then to the giant elephant collision, Kaido succeeded. It was only 5 or 6 seconds before and after, but when the dust settled, the blueprint had already fallen into Kaido's hands. Put it down. Whitebeard's loud shout came. He reached out and grabbed the big naginata, a long-handled weapon, stuck on the ground, and then suddenly slashed at Kaido. HMPH, Whitebeard, you're a dying man, and you're making trouble. Kaido snorted coldly, holding the blueprint with one hand, facing the opponent with the other, and punched him. Going flying boat, Qinyang watched this scene with satisfaction. He walked slowly back to the throne and sat down. Lifting Erlang's legs, he stretched out his hand to conjure a glass of wine from the treasure house, and quietly enjoyed the outbreak of the war. Continue to fight, don't stop, the more lively the fight, the better, he. Chapter 0322 missing a back rubbing shoulder. Boom. Whitebeard's naginata slashed, carrying a huge vibrational force, sweeping the ground and pushing towards Kaido. Seeing this, Kaido snorted coldly, did his part, and punched him. His fist was majestic, and he punched it out, as if there was a ghost of a monster. After colliding with the slash, a big explosion occurred immediately. Boom! The gust of wind from the flat ground raged, involving everything within a radius of several hundred meters. Many people nearby were swept away by the aftermath of the shock, and their internal organs were severely injured, and blood was vomited from the mouth. PFF'd. The Battle of the 4 Emperors run away. The previous war started, and the 4 Emperor-level super masters still have reservations, but at this moment, they have completely entered the heat, and they will no longer keep hands with each other. Whitebeard and Kaido fought each other, barely evenly matched. But at this time, Kong took another shot. He took advantage of Kaido to deal with Whitebeard, and immediately bullied him. His whole body showed a sense of steel. Kaido, hand over the drawings. Kong punched, and the momentum was like a rainbow. Kaido reflexively strikes, head on. Boom. There was another explosion, but this time, it was Kong who was repelled. After all, he is already old, and his combat power is not as good as when he was at his peak. Compared with Kaido, who is still at his peak, there is a clear gap. HMPH, old man, get out. Kaido pushed Kong back with one blow, and quickly retreated at 287. Even he didn't dare to fight with a group of people, there was no chance of winning, and he couldn't even beat Whitebeard alone. Seeing that he took the blueprint and prepared to evacuate, the captains of the Whitebeard pirates were immediately enraged. The captain of the 3rd Division took the lead. He ran all the way, raised his arms, and turned his whole body into a diamond. With absolute hardness, he broke through all those who stood in his way. Kaido, quote. He yelled and chased away. HMPH, courting death. Drought Jack snorted coldly, he let out an elephant roar, flicked his proboscis, and slapped Diamond Jozu violently. Boom. A muffled sound, Jozu was forced to stop. And this short delay, Kaido has retreated farther and farther. It will be troublesome if you run away. Rayleigh looked at the blueprint in his hand, and finally chose to shoot. He slashed out with a sword, and suddenly there was an invisible sword energy dividing the earth. Whoosh. In an instant, a sword energy slashed the earth, and a sword mark several hundred meters long was carved on the ground. Kaido took a step and had to stop in front of the moat. Rayleigh, you retiring old fellow, come to join in the fun. Ha ha ha, don't make meaningless fights. No matter whether these 2 drawings are true or false, it's useless if you get them. Rayleigh shook his head. If it wasn't for Dream choosing the auction location here, he wouldn't be bothered about such a thing. And between the two talking, a bloody figure suddenly flashed in front of Kaido. 7. Dao Kaido, known as the strongest creature in the world, your blood should be delicious. Redfield Isho, suddenly sticking out his right hand, grabbed towards Kaido. HMPH, do you think you are invincible after eating a mythical fruit? Kaido snorted disdainfully and slapped it away, while Armament Haki turned into a shock. Boom. With a muffled sound, without making physical contact, Kaido pushed the opponent back with a single blow. However, being blocked like this, Kaido also lost the best opportunity to withdraw. At this moment, he has been surrounded by people. Marine, Whitebeard, major pirates, etc., who can still stand here now, none of them are good stubborn. Chinyang shook the fine wine in the glass gently and watched the scene with interest. Suddenly, Kaido stared around, looked up at the sky, and laughed loudly. King of Heroes, I don't care if you are a dreamer or not, but you seem to be collecting fruits too. I bid 30, join me, and help me repel them. Quote. He. Hearing this, Chinyang chuckled twice and said, I am the King of Heroes, Gilgamesh, talk to me about joining forces for Emperors Kaido. As a mortal, you are very good, but you want to talk to me on an equal footing. 100 years earlier. This, Kaido was not angry either, and looked at Whitebeard and the others calmly. He only needs to confirm that the King of Heroes will not participate in the war, that's enough, he is sure that he can escape. The biggest problem is not in front of you, but outside the sea, the blockade of hundreds of warships. Pycnus, you still haven't shot. Suddenly, Kaido shouted loudly. Everyone's faces froze. Only a sigh sounded in the void, and a figure stepped out, as if stepping from the realm of nothingness into reality. The man was wearing a gray cloak and a crown, and was about 40 years old, tall and burly. Kaido, I didn't expect you to actually get the blueprints. The man smiled and said, however, I don't dare to take action. The experts here are like clouds, and they will be smashed to ashes. Hearing this, Whitebeard narrowed his eyes and looked intently. The patriarch of the Pycnus clan, the Walking in the Void, Void King, he frowned deeply, another troublesome character. Void King, Pycnus, nicknamed Void Walker, Void Fruit ability. This person's combat power can only be considered sloppy, and it is estimated that it is the level of the cadres of the 4 emperors, but his ability is very strong. The so-called virtual world is another world of nothingness that corresponds to the real world. Similar to Dream World and Mirror World, they are both worlds constructed from devil fruits. They are very small, but they are more than enough to hide a person's body. If you want to deal with this person, only those with space ability can do it. Seeing this person appear, Qin Yang couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He knew early on that there was such a person hidden in the dark, and the omniscient and omnipotent star could also calculate the specific position. It's just this virtual world is a bit troublesome, and it may require the sea dragons, sea dragon god, to deal with it, or Gilgamesh's deviated sword. He analyzed leisurely. Of course, the most direct one is the main body. Emperor Qin, you can slap him to death with a flip of his hand, so it's not a concern. Thinking of this, Qin Yang turned his eyes and looked towards the west. The line of sight seemed to penetrate a long distance and saw a man and a woman. 70. The Empress stared at the man in front of her. She had seen this face many times, but at that time, the temperament of the person in front of her was different from now. He is now, with an ethereal temperament, standing in front of him. He can clearly see it, but he can't perceive it. It seems that the other party is not in the same dimension as her, so she cannot perceive it. Stupid dragon. The Empress snorted softly and said, "How dare you take the initiative to show up? I am Emperor Qin, not the sea dragon you know." Qin Yang said calmly, "Let's go, for the sake of your relationship with Heilong." Liar. Stupid dragon. Still trying to fool the concubine. There was a smile on the corner of the queen's mouth. You are basically the same person. No matter how different your temperament is, your eyes are the same. Eyes? Qin Yang asked curiously, are you so sure? Concubine's intuition. Empress said firmly, this is for you. Saying that, she reached out and threw out a box. Qin Yang took it, and after a brief perception, he understood that there was a fruit inside. This is your reward for helping your concubine assassinate Tenryubito. Finally you still know that you owe us a debt. Qin Yang nodded with satisfaction. Tell me, what are you waiting for in the dream? The concubine paid the remuneration, and the concubine and your dreams will be separated. Queen's mouth curled up, her eyes scrutinized, but you stupid dragon, now you owe your concubine. You stole the concubine's heavenly gold. Hearing this, Qin Yang couldn't help shaking his head. When did the gold in the sky become yours? However, you are chasing my footsteps time and time again. Should I say that you are persistent, or forget it, the little Empress, by my side there is still one person who can beat his back and rub his shoulders. If you still want to follow, then just follow. Quote. Helplessly speaking, Qin Yang turned around and left. Hearing this, the Empress widened her eyes and felt anxious. Wait, stop for your concubine. She is very annoyed. She is the emperor of the daughter country. This stupid dragon wants her to beat her back and rub her shoulders. Chapter 0323-Saint, Angel. ORZ in state. Qin Yang walked away, and the direction he was walking was not the auction house, but the river in the number 2 area. Because of Rayleigh's appearance, the man in the peaked cap failed to escape with the blueprint. Instead, his gecko pirates were wiped out, and the blueprint was taken away by Rayleigh. Of course, because the shadow demon had an agreement with him, the man in the peaked cap could still save his life. However, even if the blueprints were taken away, it had nothing to do with their dreams. The fruits that should be handed over had to be handed over. As she was walking, the Empress behind her caught up. She was full of anger, obviously dissatisfied with, beating her back and rubbing her shoulders. You stupid dragon, wait! She exclaimed softly. It was just that the words suddenly stopped, and the space in front was suddenly torn apart, and a dark figure walked out. Shadow demon. The Empress raised her eyebrows and stopped. The Yin Yao was the second dream member she came into contact with. The person who entered into an assassination deal with her was the Yin Yao. At this moment, the shadow demon was holding a man in his hands. It was the man in the peaked cap. This man is not in very good condition. He was seriously injured. Like a dead dog, he was carried by the shadow demon. Lord Qin Emperor. The shadow demon swept the Empress's words, and then spoke respectfully. Wake him up. Yes. The shadow demon threw the man on the ground and pointed at his forehead. A dark wind blew, and the man's face twitched, and he suddenly woke up. He first saw the shadow demon, then caught a glimpse of Qin Yang, and immediately his pupils shrank. Emperor Qin. After speaking, he immediately reacted, reached out and touched his chest. His face changed greatly. Drawings. The blueprint has been robbed. The shadow demon said calmly. Pluto Rayleigh shot. A hockey, it will stun you. If I hadn't rescued you, you would be dead. What? The man in the peaked cap turned pale and said angrily, why don't you stop it? With your ability to easily subdue the phoenix, you will have no problem dealing with Rayleigh. Pay attention to your words. In front of Lord Qin Emperor, can you shout and shout? The shadow demon snorted coldly, flicked his fingers, and a rope of shadow flew out, tying him up. I promised you at the time to ensure your safety, but I didn't say I would interfere in the blueprint competition. Tricky. The man in the peaked cap was full of anger. Qin Yang raised his hand, motioning for the shadow demon to be quiet, and said to the man, I don't care about the drawings, I only care about the remaining 75 fruits. What about the people in the alliance that are connected with you? HMPH, now that the blueprint has been snatched away, what kind of fruit are we talking about? The man in the peaked cap hummed, Emperor Qin, unless you help me retrieve the blueprint, we won't give the rest of the auction fruit. He he he. Hearing this, Qin Yang chuckled softly, and within his pupils, the three Guyu slowly turned, and suddenly turned into a kaleidoscope in the next second. Looking at these eyes, the man in the peaked cap trembled all over, and the next moment, his eyes fell into sluggishness. What's your name? Rick. 7. What power? Rick Pirates. As the rest of the fruit in the hands of the rest of the captains of your 6 great pirate alliance. No, the fruit is in the hands of the Holy Maiden. Saint. Qin Yang was stunned and asked, who is the saint? The saint is an angel, from the kingdom of heaven. The fruits of the auction drawings are all provided by her. Rick answered without reservation. The divine kingdom in the sky. Qin Yang heard this title for the second time. The last time it was because of the sacred cult pirates' call for help. It is estimated that this saint should be the princess of a country in Sky Island that calls itself the Kingdom of God. Qin Yang guessed in his heart, and at the same time asked, the saint is an angel. What does this mean? The Holy Maiden is Zone mythical human fruit model, angel. So that's the case. Qin Yang was stunned. It's a coincidence that there is actually an angel fruit. Think about it too, Sengoku has a golden Buddha, and it is not uncommon for angels to exist in the world. In other words, your mission has failed now, and the so-called saint will not provide the remaining 75 fruits. Qin Yang shook his head. Yes, Rick replied stiffly. What's the use of you then? Qin Yang stretched out his hand and pressed it on the top of the opponent's head, at the same time unlocking the illusion. What did you do? Rick looked panicked. It was illusion. Qin Yang ignored him and his eyes were indifferent. Frost power emerged from his palms, and the sound of clicking sounded. Rex started from the head and was gradually frozen. At the moment when it turned into an ice sculpture, Rick still maintained a terrified look. This is the seal at the cellular level, and the soul is frozen together. A breeze blew, and the ice sculpture collapsed, shattering into a piece of ice crystals and dissipating. It's a really unreliable bidder. It seems that I have to find a chance to go to the kingdom of Sky Island. Qin Yang couldn't help shaking his head. Fortunately, the Archangel gave the power of holy light at that time. With the coordinates, it was easy to find a Sky Island country. Angel fruit. I don't know if there is any god fruit. Qin Yang laughed to himself. Get 75 fruits right away, he would get it sooner or later anyway. Lord Qin Emperor, the shadow demon whispered. It's daytime, I have limited time, so take a step back. After speaking, his body slammed into a ball, then disappeared. Looks like you have miscalculations at times. Empress stepped forward and said softly, although I don't know the specific situation. From your conversation, the concubine can also hear the general idea. Is it just you? Qin Yang glanced at her and swallowed the words, big boobs and no brains. However, what are you trying to do to collect the fruits? The Empress asked curiously, since the first time I contacted you, you have not done it all the time. Also, did you create the dream? What do you want? Concubine, very curious. Hee little girl, curiosity killed the cat. Qin Yang smiled and said, want to know? You can come and have a look. Saying that, Qin Yang walked over. He stepped on the air one step at a time, as if there were invisible stairs, and he walked to the heights step by step. The Empress widened her eyes, a little incredulous. However, she has a strong competitive spirit towards Heilong, and she took a step forward without any hesitation at the moment. The red high-heeled shoes stepped on the void, and when they fell, they really felt the support of some kind of platform. Is this a staircase created by the void? The Empress murmured, increasingly surprised by Emperor Qin's unfathomable depth. The two went higher and farther. After a while, the two stopped together. Qin Yang looked down and saw the chaotic battlefield. Gaze, and her mouth suddenly widened. Whitebeard, Kaido, Kong, Kizaru, and those old men who seem to be very strong. There are a lot of strong people, and there are 4 emperors alone. 4 emperors. Qin Yang chuckled lightly, his eyes calm. Just mortals. Chapter 0324 the first person in the world. Second update I had a rear-end collision today, and I spent a long time with the insurance company. I wanted to update it in the afternoon. Linksea Void created stairs and platforms. Qin Yang looked at the battlefield below without saying a word. The combat power of the 3-star illusionary god has far surpassed that of the 4 emperors. Even if he faces 4 emperors at the same time, Qin Yang is not wrong at all. At this moment, in the battlefield below, Kaido has become the target of public criticism and is besieged by everyone. But with the appearance of Qin Yang and the people below all looked up. The Empress, the Qin Emperor. Kizaru's face changed slightly. He only felt the breath of a person, but when he looked, he saw the existence of Emperor Qin again. In an instant, the scene fell silent. Kaido frowned. Captain Qin Emperor, what are you doing here? He was very alert. He had fought against Heilong at the beginning, so he knew exactly how powerful the cadres were, let alone the dreamy Qin Emperor. That is a super expert that surpasses the 4 emperors. It is impossible for such a person to appear suddenly, if he is not nervous. 4 Emperor Kaido, hand over the drawings. Qin Yang was unsmiling, and said calmly, the bidder of the blueprint cannot hand over the 90 fruits at the auction price. Therefore, the blueprint will be recycled and a second auction will be held on the spot. A pause, he added, because this person doesn't follow the rules, he has now been obliterated by me. After that, the faction, alliance, and the people behind him will be included in the Dream Hunt list. Therefore, for the sake of to prevent similar things from happening, in this second auction, you must deliver the fruits of the auction on the spot. Quote. What did you say? Kaido's expression changed greatly, and he said angrily, now that the blueprint has fallen into my hands, do you want to take it back? There is a problem with the auction, and it has nothing to do with me. I'm going to retrieve the blueprint. What's with you? Qin Yang's expression was indifferent and unmoved. This, Kaido was furious, and it didn't take him seriously, as if to say, I'm going to take things back, any resistance is futile. Not only him, but the others are also very dissatisfied. Now that the blueprint is in Kaido's hands, as long as you give it a little time, you will be able to grab it. Now that Emperor Qin wants to recycle the second auction, he will inevitably spend a lot of devil fruit, and then he will still have to compete. Wait. Suddenly, Kong said loudly, there are 2 drawings, what's the matter? Who knows, someone sneaked into the auction venue, copied a copy of the drawing, and stole it. I have already sent someone to recover it. Qin Yang said casually. Hearing this, Doflamingo immediately took a few steps forward and said respectfully, I am very sorry, Lord Qin, the blueprint could not be recovered. I know, it doesn't make any difference whether the drawings to be recycled are 1 or 2. Qin Yang waved his hand, turned his eyes to Rayleigh, and said, "Pluto Rayleigh, I wait for the dream to owe you a favor, so I will not shoot you. This is the principle of my waiting, but please hand over the blueprint in your hand." "Really?" Rayleigh Vivi Isho said, "I have retired and will not participate in this competition, but since the blueprint is in my hands, I am more inclined to destroy it than return it to you." "Destroy?" "Yes." Chin Yong nodded, and his eyes narrowed immediately. In an instant, 3-hooked jade appeared in his pupils, and then turned into a kaleidoscope writing wheel eye. Amaterasu. Puff. Rayleigh's hand, above the blueprint, a black flame ignited out of thin air, and it turned to ashes in an instant. Black fire. Rayleigh's heart froze, and he hurriedly discarded what was in his hand. Drawings were burnt to ashes, and the Amaterasu flames disappeared. Seeing this scene, everyone felt that Emperor Qin was domineering. And apart from a distance of hundreds of meters, with a glance, the blueprint in the hands of Hades Rayleigh was destroyed. This kind of strength is terrifying. "It's your turn, Kaido." Only then did Chin Yong look at Kaido, and with a slight jump, the whole person fell lightly. Seeing this, the Empress hesitated a little, and then jumped down from the sky. The two landed one after the other, and everyone subconsciously tensed their nerves. HMPH, if you say it, pay it, stop looking down on people. Kaido laughed angrily, and even took the initiative to attack. "Let me try it today. How much does the legendary Dream Captain weigh?" He shot in anger, without reservation. He punched out with great momentum, as if to shatter the space. "Don't speak madly. Although you know that you are a reckless man, you are not an idiot who can't even judge the difference in strength." Chin Yong shook his head and punched him. Boom. The expected collision of punches did not happen. Kaido punched out, and at the moment of contact with Chin Yong, all the power melted like ice and snow, and disappeared in an instant. With his blow, all that was left was brute force. Impossible. Kaido's eyes widened, full of shock. "Let me give you a compliment, just brute force has such power." Chin Yong chuckled, turned his fist into a palm, clasped Kaido's wrist, and then tugged gently. Immediately, Kaido's center of gravity was destroyed, and the whole person rushed towards the bottom of Chin Yong. At the same time, Chin Yong moved sideways one step, and at the same time his right hand turned into a palm knife, which was suddenly cut off. Armorization. Critical moment, Kaido broke out his strongest haki, a layer of invisible armor, which immediately wrapped the whole body, especially the vest part, where almost all the power was concentrated and the defense was strengthened. However, this can be called an absolute defense, and it is vulnerable to a single blow in front of Chin Yang's palm. Boom. A loud sound, the invisible armor was like paper paste, easily shattered, and a palm fell on Kaido's vest, which immediately beat him to the point where his soul swayed, and his soul was not possessed. PFF'd. Kaido spat out a mouthful of blood and turned pale. He was knocked to the ground by a blow, and he couldn't get up for a while. Chin Yang's blow had a very special power. This power directly penetrated the skin and attacked his internal organs. It can be said that after suffering this blow, Kaido's internal organs were bleeding profusely. If he were an ordinary person, even the cadres of the 4 emperors would have been beaten to death. Seeing this scene, everyone at the scene looked sluggish, and the entire 3.0 chaotic battlefield fell into extreme silence. No one spoke, even forgot to breathe, staring blankly at Kaido who fell to the ground. Just heard Chin Yong continue. "As expected of the world's strongest creature, the constitution is really strong. I shattered your internal organs with one blow, and it has already begun to recover." Emperor Qin. Kaido struggled to stand up and stared at Chin Yong with a gloomy tone. "You guys don't follow the rules. Are you going to tear up the auction rules you've put down by yourself now?" He. Chin Yong couldn't help laughing. "Kaido, do you have the face to tell the rules? The so-called rules are for those who don't obey the rules and can't survive. I stand above the rules. Okay, take the blueprints. Come out." Kaido's face was flushed, and he was on the verge of going wild. As expected of Emperor Qin, the #1 person in the world. He gritted his teeth, full of murderous intent. Chapter-321-340 Beating the 4 emperors is like killing a dog. As expected of Emperor Qin, the #1 person in the world. Kaido gritted his teeth, killing intent overflowing. Asking him to hand over the blueprints would simply kill him. Once handed over, the probability of being able to get them back is infinitely low. Unfortunately, in front of Qin Yang, Kaido knew that he was not an opponent and could not beat him at all. Looks like you haven't given up yet, so I'll take it myself. Qin Yang shook his head and was about to take it back. At this moment, ripples appeared in the space. It was like ripples on the calm water, and from the center of the ripples, a palm stretched out faster than Qin Yang. Go. Hand grabbed Kaido's shoulder and yanked. Stay. Qin Yang snorted softly, grabbed it with one hand, and shattered the space directly, as if he had penetrated the dimension, trying to capture the life in the different space. What? The person who shot the shot screamed in surprise, and Qin Yang grabbed his arm before he could catch it. Damn it! It can ignore space and penetrate the virtual world. What kind of monster is this? Picnic's tone was startled. He only felt a powerful force coming. His left arm was numb, and the whole person had a feeling that there was no way to avoid it, and there was no escape. Humph! He groaned angrily, grabbed Kaido and forcibly evacuated regardless of the physical trauma. Puff! The left arm stabbed and was shattered by the power of space. Really decisive, to give up an arm, but also to save people. Qin Yang opened his mouth in surprise, holding a broken arm, and couldn't help shaking his head. The rest of the spectators were also shocked. Emperor Qin was too terrifying. The virtual world created by the fruit of the virtual world was also useless in front of the other party. You must know that the virtual world is the other side of reality, just like a mirror. You stand in front of the mirror. Can you kill the person in the mirror? I didn't expect that the Void King would not work either, and I almost got killed for saving everyone. Someone muttered, his heart heavy. Qin Yang discarded the broken arm, turned his eyes and looked 100 meters away. Don't hide, in front of me, no matter where you hide, it's the same. As soon as the voice fell, I saw the space in front of me, and in the ripples, Kaido and Pickney's appeared together. Compared to Kaido's internal injury, Pickney's appearance is much more miserable. His left arm was torn, and blood was constantly spilling out at this moment, staining half of his body red underscore. Haha, he gasped, his face pale. Kaido, I can only save you once, then you can directly think of a way. Kaido's face was ashen, and after a moment of silence, he said loudly, Emperor Qin, since the blueprint is in my hands, I won't give it to you. But I can give you devil fruits. Oh, Qin Yang raised his eyebrows and said, if you take out 90 fruits now, I won't hold you accountable. Shit, asshole, if I had 90, wouldn't there be a bid at the auction? Kaido was furious and hummed, in the 2 months before the auction, I collected only 60 fruits. If you agree, all these fruits can be given to you. Speaking of which, he was very unhappy in his heart. He was majestic and united with the Pickney's family, and only got 60 fruits, and most of them were the stocks of the Pickney's family. I thought I would be able to capture it, but I didn't expect that at the auction, the rest of the forces were more arrogant than each other, and they could smash 90 fruits. I don't know who has such financial resources. When he heard Kaido's offer, Qin Yang thought for a while, then chuckled, it's a mere 60. Even the first round offer can't be surpassed. Do you think I can agree? You don't have to go too far. Kaido's face filled with suffocation. Seeing that the conversation between the two broke down, Kong Kong suddenly said, Emperor Qin, our world government is willing to offer 80 fruits, how about that? Go away. Qin Yang glanced at him and was too lazy to answer. Kong's complexion sank. You have always been very opinionated about our government. We got the blueprint and we can promise that it will never be used on your fantasy. Ha 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 ha, do you think people are 3-year-olds? Suddenly, Redfield laughed. Kong, your promise means a few dollars, and the guru say 5 elders on your head can't guarantee it. He said that. He looked at Chin Yong and said, Captain Dream, I have no grudges with you, and this time I'm not here for the blueprint, but you have captured the captain of the treasure pirates. He gave it to me. Chin Yong Chong did not hear these words. Shaking his head, Chin Yang's eyes narrowed, and suddenly, a huge coercion descended here. Kaido, Bendy has run out of patience. Claiming to be the emperor, everyone heard the intention to kill. Hearing this, Kaido's heart froze, and he roared, Everyone, do you think that after the blueprint is auctioned again, who has a chance to get it? You have no chance, no one will have a chance. From the beginning, the auction was to do as it turns out. Dream didn't plan to let us leave with the blueprints at all. His voice was loud and heard throughout the battlefield. Now, whoever joins forces with me to deal with Emperor Qin, I will share this blueprint with them afterwards. If no one helps me, I can guarantee that before I am killed, I can absolutely destroy this blueprint, and I won't get it. No one can imagine it. Quote. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of countless people changed slightly. Damn it, he even threatened with blueprints. Bastard, this guy can't beat Emperor Qin, and he wants to destroy the blueprint. However, what he said makes sense. Even if he bids to buy the blueprint, he can't guarantee that he can take it away safely. Now that he cooperates with Kaido, the success rate is even higher. Immediately, many people expressed their intentions. Whitebeard pirates can be indifferent. They didn't want to get the blueprint, they just wanted to destroy it, so they wanted Kaido to burn the blueprint. You know, even Kong Sora can't help but want to take action now, put aside his previous position with Kaido for the time being, and deal with the dream together. Compared with the other 4 emperors, or the drawings of Hades, the threat of fantasy to the government is always there. Suddenly, the atmosphere of the scene changed. The enemy of 10,000 people. Empress murmured in a low voice, what an accident. Stupid dragon, it seems that you are in trouble. These people are not trash fish. They are all thugs and murderers who have come out of the test of life and death. Really? Chin Yong chuckled and said, aren't you interested in drawings? Now might be the best chance. With a snort, a smile appeared on the corner of the queen's mouth, and she said, my concubine just wants to take you back to Nine Snake Island. You have repeatedly cheated and fooled the people of your concubine's body. My concubine will settle accounts with you. Pause, he said again. However, you are also kind to the concubine body, and the concubine body will help you once. Ha ha ha, Chin Yong couldn't help laughing twice, turning his right hand, and suddenly, the dragon's blood Guogong quietly appeared. What's the point of being a mere ants? I beat the 4 emperors like killing a dog. Saying that, Chin Yong pointed at a group of pirates. I am Emperor Qin, you guys, come together. Chapter 0326_Super 4 Emperors. The first update tilde it seems that you have a great opinion on the Empress. You guys, let's go together. Chin Yang's sword pointed at everyone, and the dragon-blooded Guogong issued a burst of sword cries. Seeing this, many people's anger was high, and the aura of the 10,000 people was shocking. In addition to the shock, it was anger, which was extremely complicated. Go! Kaido gave a loud shout. Hearing his roar, a giant elephant came running wildly. He lowered his head and aimed 2 long tusks at Chin Yong. Absolute brute force, pushing everything horizontally, like a chariot, nothing can stop it. Drought. Chin Yong was not in a hurry, and the dragon-blooded Guogong in his hand was gently crossed. Ding! With a soft sound, the ivory was on top of the blade, pushing Chin Yong back and forth. Chin Emperor. Jack's big eyes were like copper bells, and an elephant roar came from his throat, and all his brute force was concentrated on a pair of fangs. Go to hell. Chin Yang's footsteps stopped suddenly, and his retreating figure suddenly stagnated, with a loud bang, and the giant elephant's collision could no longer advance an inch. The bones of the beasts are scattered all over the place, the spires, red crystals, and steel wheels, moving is wind, stopping is empty, the sound of spears hitting each other fills the virtual city. 63 Thunder Roar Cannons. In the slow chant, Qin raised his left hand and stretched out to jack the giant elephant. The spiritual power gathered in the palm of the hand, the golden thunder and lightning flashed, and the sound of babel sounded, which suddenly turned into a lightning shock. Boom! In an instant, the thunder roar cannon devoured the giant elephant, and in the smoke and thunder light of the explosion, the scream of the giant elephant was heard. Breaking fist. At this moment, a loud shout came suddenly. It was a middle-aged man wearing a crown, who suddenly approached and punched Qin from top to bottom. King of Destruction, don't be a good king in your own country, come to join in the fun, you want to die. Qin said softly, and with a slight jump, he avoided the blow. The King of Destruction hit the ground with a bang, and with a bang, within a radius of more than 10 meters, the ground collapsed and a huge pothole appeared. Seeing this, Marco in the distance hurriedly said, King of Destruction, Paramesha Fruit Destroyer, Dad, this guy is also very troublesome. Should we continue to watch the battle, or which side should we help? No, I'll stay away. Whitebeard looked solemn and told the crew to retreat. At this moment, when the King of Destruction failed with a punch and wanted to strike again, a large dark hand suddenly descended on his head. Hand of Hell. Qin grabbed at a distance of dozens of meters. Immediately, the power of the demon was majestic, gathered into a dark hand, and suddenly fell from the sky. What move? The King of Destruction was stunned, there was no time to dodge, and the dark hand suddenly came. Boom! With one paw, he was swallowed up in an instant, and he was hit into the pothole with a single blow. In the explosion, the aftermath spread, and the demon power was like a yin wind, sweeping away at once. One blow, someone was full of horror. It's terrifying, is this really a human? The Hand of Hell, the move of the great monster Ibaraki Doji, summons the arm from hell to attack the enemy. In the past, Qin, as the main body phantom god, could use the black flame of Ibaraki Doji, but after the phantom god was upgraded to 3-star level, all this changed. Although each phantom body can still only provide one ability, this ability can already be freely chosen. For example, now, Qin has chosen the Hand of Hell, which means that he cannot use the black flame for the time being. Qin even had a hunch that if the star level of the phantom god continued to increase, he would be able to use all the abilities of the rest of the phantom body sooner or later. As soon as he captured a so-called King of Destruction, Qin stood in the sky, looking down at all the pirates, one by one. I can't even touch the corner of my clothes. Kaido, do you want the others to die for you? Consume my strength. Kaido's expression changed and he snorted coldly. No matter how strong you are, your physical strength will eventually have its limits. In the face of so many people, you will lose the battle sooner or later. Don't be afraid of him, everyone will come together. As he said that, he made the first move, stepped on his right foot, and the whole person rushed into the sky. Seeing this, many experts also hesitated and joined in together. In an instant, at least a dozen masters attacked at the same time. In addition, all kinds of hot weapons in the New World also aimed at Qin. Is it useful if there are more people? Suddenly, Doflamingo laughed and said, Lord Qin Emperor, this kind of role doesn't need you at all, I'll deal with it. Saying that, a huge spiritual pressure suddenly descended. I am the fantastic face breaker 10 blades see Yaksha. As soon as Doflamingo pointed it out, there was a high-speed gathering of red spiritual pressure on the end of his finger. This spiritual pressure dyed the space red and radiant. Virtual flash. Whoosh. A sturdy flash of light swept across the battlefield in an instant, and the dozen people who came from the siege were engulfed in one breath under this attack. Boom. A big bang sounded, and in the battlefield, Reiatsu was raging, and the aftermath alone caused a gust of wind. Impossible. Someone turned pale in shock. When did Doflamingo have such power? As one of Shichibukai, the clown king of the dark world, Doflamingo is very well known. It can be said that most people know it and know exactly what kind of combat power this person is. But at this moment, the power it has shown has far surpassed the past, reaching the admiral level or above. I'll deal with him. Kizaru's figure flashed, and suddenly flashed to Doflamingo's side, his right leg shone with golden light, and he suddenly lifted. Pirates, let's join forces for the time being and deal with the dream together. For Kizaru. Doflamingo grinned, completely true. At the same time, Kaido had jumped in front of Chin Yang, his whole body exuded a monstrous aura, and a majestic punch came mercilessly bombarding him. You can erase hockey, but what about brute force? Chin Yang's expression was as usual. Facing this blow, his eyes froze, and in an instant, a pair of kaleidoscope blood-round eyes appeared in his pupils. Susanoo. Chakra, like a flame visible to the naked eye, wrapped him all at once, and then a complete Valkyrie phantom suddenly appeared. You're still too young, Kaido. Chin Yang was in the shadow of the martial god, and he thought for a while. Suddenly, Susanoo stretched out his palms, like slapping a fly, and slapped it down. Boom. A heavy muffled sound. Kaido didn't have time to get close, and was flattened by these two big hands. What? Kaido opened his arms and resisted. What kind of power is this? Strange moves, one move after another, are hard to guard against. The ability to send you back to the west. Chin Yang, Isho, controlled Susanoo, pinched Kaido firmly, and then smashed to the ground. Boom. Like falling to death of a small animal, with a loud bang, Kaido was thrown into the ground abruptly. Two strong four emperors are in front of him, just like children. Redfield was dripping with cold sweat. Is this the power beyond the four emperors? Chapter 0327 Cover the Sky. Heavenly Yaksha, several times, always Miss Orz. Kaido shot, was smashed by Susanoo, and was thrown into the ground again. Called four emperors, facing Emperor Chin, were like children who were easily hanged and beaten. This is the power beyond the four emperors. Redfield was dripping with cold sweat. He absorbed the blood, regained his youth, and reached the peak of his combat power. However, seeing that Kaido was so powerless, he couldn't help but feel a kind of horror in his heart. The world is changing too fast. He just stayed in prison for a period of time. After he came out, Roger, who used to symbolize the peak, was dead, and the new peak, Emperor Chin, was far beyond imagination. In the face of this monster, the number of people is meaningless. Redfield's eyes flickered, struggling in his heart. However, his blood must be very advanced. Licking his tongue, the Red Earl was fighting between heaven and man. Shoot, it is likely to be suppressed, but there is a chance to gain stronger power. However, he was hesitating, but Chin Yang would not. He controlled Susanoo, raised his foot and stomped it hard. Boom. Kaido couldn't get out of the ground and was crushed by a foot. The whole ground shook violently, and everyone stared at each other, and their fighting spirit dropped sharply. Really win? Are you kidding? Kaido, you idiot. It's better to stop, otherwise everyone will be finished. Some people have the intention to retreat, and the disparity in combat power is completely one-sided. Moreover, the dreamy 10 masters are in the auction venue in Area 1. Once the 10 masters come, it will be a massacre. I want to retire now, it's too late. Chin Yang was in the mouth of the phantom of the god of war, and looked at everyone calmly. You have more than 3 of the 4 emperors, the admiral level is nearly 10, and the rest of the big pirates are like a feather. With this kind of lineup, it is very easy to destroy the marine. However, it is self-defeating for me to wait for the dream. Most of the first-class forces in the New World gathered here, but they did not cooperate sincerely with each other, and there was even a short-term alliance between marine and pirates. If everyone worked together, Chin Yang might have to spend a lot of time. But there is nothing so simple in the world. Everyone is guarding against each other, and it is impossible to deal with him. Go back, Doflamingo. As he spoke, Qinyang stretched out his right palm, illusion manifests. As soon as the voice fell, in an instant, the world changed. The Sabayati archipelago has disappeared, and in its place is a demonic realm. Where dark and terrifying, monsters from the ground came out, and big strange birds lined up in the sky. The ground is burning, the sky is overcast, the whole world becomes bizarre, monsters and living beings underscore. Tilde. What is this? An LT, someone was shocked. Percent, is greater than or equal to. He. Qinyang chuckled twice, what you fear will appear, and all illusions will be real. Stop struggling, in the face of absolute power, all your resistance will be meaningless. With his voice, the surroundings changed again. All the illusions began to distort, and they turned into pure energy, converging toward the sky. In the sky above that kilometer, a dark vortex appeared. The incomparably thick clouds, just looking at it, make people feel heavy. In this world, the top combat power is roughly divided into Admiral level, 4 Emperor level, and the Super 4 Emperor level above the 4 Emperors. Qinyang's voice resounded, solemnly bound, as if the voice of the Emperor, accurately entered everyone's ears. Maybe there was no accurate statement in the past, but today, I name this type of combat power, Great Emperor level. This is a blow from the Great Emperor, try to endure it. Boom. Above the sky, in the thick clouds, the thunder light flickered and the roar continued. Suddenly, a huge golden palm broke through the black cloud and descended slowly. This palm, like the arm of an ancient giant, is incomparably huge. Each of its 5 fingers is hundreds of meters long, and its thickness is comparable to the thickest city wall in time. What? Countless people raised their heads and stared blankly at the giant hand in the sky. They forgot to escape, or in other words, there was no point in escaping, because it was too late, the palm was too huge, and there was no time to escape its attack range. This palm fell, and it was sure to smash Sabayati archipelago to pieces. At this moment, the time seemed to be so long, and everyone could only watch Zishan press down with one hand. This seems to be the power of nature. Compared with it, human beings are so insignificant, like ants, they can only shiver. Boom. Finally, the big hand fell. The first person to come into contact with it was the Archeman mangrove of Sabayati archipelago. These tall ancient trees of thousands of years of forest were bent and broken by the Emperor's blow, and they could not be stopped at all. Boom boom boom. And as the mangroves break and bend, the entire island that relies on the roots of the tree is slowly collapsing and shattering. 79 areas, at this moment, the reel broken into 79 pieces. Above the 4 Emperors' Great Emperor level combat power. Whitebeard was holding a large Naginata sword, just as sluggish. This kind of terrifying power, he can't do it. He can cause earthquakes, tsunamis, and even collapse the sky, but he can't do it like this blow. Boom. In the end, JTN pressed his hand on the island. An instant, 2/3 of the Sabayati archipelago was deeply pressed to the bottom of the sea. It seemed that there was an indescribable mighty force that wiped out most of the entire island, leaving only a crescent-shaped area that could still exist. Few survivors. Even Kaido was photographed under the sea by this palm, and his life and death are unknown. Qinyang stood up in the sky, and Su Zuoneng disappeared with him. He looked at the broken earth and shook his head slightly. This is a phantom manifestation, with full force. It is much more powerful than expected. However, the fruit has fallen into the sea, and I have to trouble you. Just after he finished speaking, a dragon roar sounded. I saw a flash of white light, and above the sky, the figure of the sea dragon suddenly appeared. He roared loudly, plunged into the sea, and went under the sea to salvage those fruits. Stupid dragon. Below, the Empress opened her mouth and was completely shocked by Zatian. What kind of power is this? Is this a myth? In her mind, she recalled the ancient secretary of Nine Snake Island. In that mysterious era, what kind of big monster Gorgon was fierce and mighty? This kind of scene will only appear in this mythical battle. If the four sovereigns can still be regarded as a realm that humans can reach, then what is the difference between the great emperor and the living gods? No difference. The empress took a deep breath and looked up at Qin Yang, who was standing in the sky. Her inner thoughts were complicated. However, Qin Yang didn't care about her thoughts at all. Very well, the rebels are gone. Sea Dragon will have the blueprints back soon. Qin Yang turned his eyes and looked at the survivors, said. Next, conduct a second auction. Chapter-321-340 Harvest. The third update. I have a cold and feel dizzy. The weather has changed a lot recently. In the south, please pay attention to keeping warm. The rebels have disappeared. Next, a second auction. Qin Yang looked down at the survivors and spoke calmly. The so-called survivors were actually the objects he deliberately avoided. Whitebeard pirates were lucky not to be targeted, so they were mostly safe. Secondly, there are some pirates, the number of which is less than 1,000. Like Marine, Kizaru was with Doflamingo, so he wasn't attacked, but Kong Kong was not so lucky and was directly suppressed under the sea. At this point, everyone is very honest, and there is no idea of provoking again. How to auction? Someone asked cautiously. The price is clearly marked, and the starting price is 61 fruits. Qin Yang said, every time you increase the price, it must not be less than 5 pieces. Hearing this, the scene was silent for a while. The survivors that still exist now, no one can come up with so much. The real wealth has already been covered by the sky and fell into the sea. Seeing this, Whitebeard said loudly, Emperor Qin, sell it to me, and I will destroy it. Huh? Qin Yang raised his eyebrows and said, what do you want to say? In this regard, Whitebeard shook his head and said, because of this drawing, how many careerists have been inspired, and these careerists have also been photographed under the sea by your palm. In the future, the world will be much more peaceful, but if the drawings flow out again, I am afraid that there will still be chaos. You buy the blueprint and how you want to use it is up to you. Please make an offer. Qin Yang said indifferently. Ji la la Emperor Qin, you are a hero. Apart from Roger, you are the only person I admire. Whitebeard smiled and said, I can't take out that many fruits at one time. So, if you can trust me, Whitebeard, I can give you 40 fruits, and prepare 50 later, at the price of 90 fruits, buy your drawings. This sincerity is very sincere. Qin Yang thought about it and smiled. Whitebeard, of course I can trust you. You are one of the rare big pirates in this sea. I agree with your proposal. Whitebeard took out 40 in one go, plus the 12 in his hand, it was 52. In addition, under the sea, at least several hundred fruits have been sunk, and these fruits can be salvaged slowly. In a blueprint auction, Qin Yangshuo said that he could get 200 or 300 pieces. If the salvage results are gratifying, I am afraid that the number can be doubled. Big gain. It can be said that the income this time is more than that of the past year combined. For a period of time in the future, you don't need to worry about the fruits, and you don't need to collect them for the time being. Thinking of this, Qin Yang Vivi Isho said, Whitebeard, I don't have much time left to wait for my dream. The next time we meet may be a long time later. Before that, please prepare the remaining 50 fruits. He is going to let the dream out of the public eye and keep a low profile for a while. What do you mean? Whitebeard was startled. In this regard, Qin Yang did not explain, but looked at the sea below. Sea Dragon rushed out and threw a broken blueprint to Whitebeard. It was found in the sea. Heilong spit out, you have to destroy it anyway, so I will give it to you. The wet drawings are already broken, and even the handwriting on them has been blurred. Whitebeard glanced at it, then shook his head. This is probably the best ending. Thatch. Yes. Captain of the 4th Division, Thatch stepped forward and threw a large package towards Qin Yang. This is our fruit, all for you. Qin Yang took it and confirmed that it was correct, then nodded and said, then, the transaction is complete. Whitebeard, there will be a period later. After he finished speaking, he looked at Heilong. Let the Sea Beast Legion salvage the fruits under the sea. There must be no problem with Nini's treasure-hunting mouse. Well, then I'll make arrangements. Heilong nodded, then Longmu looked at the Empress, and with a flick of the dragon's tail, it drilled directly into the seabed. Qinyang also turned around and looked at the Empress. You asked earlier, what is the purpose of your dreams? And that's the answer, Lady Empress. I have a special relationship with Heilong, but they're not the same person. Qinyang said calmly, his eyes were flat without any fluctuations. Your curiosity is also satisfied, go back to where you came from. After saying that, Qinyang ignored it and turned to walk away. Taking one step, the world is torn apart, and the crack in the shadow world, like the big mouth of a monster, is slowly opening. Lord Qin Emperor. Seeing this, Doflamingo hurriedly followed and entered together. The Empress, on the other hand, stood there dumbfounded, speechless for a while. Really not alone. She murmured softly, her eyes were complicated, and she doubted her intuition. He opened his mouth and wanted to ask something, but the crack in the shadow world had slowly closed. At the same time. 69. Here is the marine base. Luckily, it survived an attack from the sky. However, the aftermath still swept through here, so the entire marine base has been razed to the ground. In the ruins, Sengoku and the others looked shocked. Ha 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 ha. The great demon lord of terror laughed out loud, the time is up. The time for dreams is up. Sengoku the Buddha, Marine, peacemakers, our future is still very long, and we will meet again in the future, ha 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 ha. In the wild laughter, the body of the great demon king of fear suddenly began to disintegrate. He started from his legs and disappeared little by little, like crystal dust, which disappeared as soon as the wind blew. It's time. Suru Vice Admiral, covered in wounds, murmured weakly, the time of the dream has come. What was that terrifying big hand just now? According to the previous speculation, is the dream going to disappear? Sengoku's eyes were full of confusion, standing in the ruins, completely at a loss for what to do. What does the great demon lord of fear mean? There are guesses in my heart, but no one can be sure. Let's go and see first. Immediately, several people split up. Suru Vice Admiral began to rescue the casualties, and the rest went to the front of the battlefield. However, when they got there, what they saw was the sunken Sabayati archipelago. Dead and wounded are everywhere. Shadow World. Qinyang was sitting on the throne, with Shadow Demon and Doflamingo below. The two counted the harvest this time. 52 ready-made fruits, 50 of which are owed by Whitebeard, and hundreds of others that have sunk under the sea, and will be salvaged soon. Qinyang glanced at it, and then said, Doflamingo, I don't have much time to wait for my dream. From now on, you will be in charge of daily affairs. As for Robin, it is your boss. Understand? Lord Qin, what time is 3.9? Doflamingo was puzzled. You're not qualified to know now. Qinyang was too lazy to explain, so he directly ordered, Ying Yao, take him away. Yes. Immediately, the shadow demon left with Doflamingo. As soon as the two of them left, Qinyang let out a breath, got up and walked in front of a pile of fruits. Part of it, used to upgrade Gilgamesh, can push him to 5 stars, and at that time, the body will reach 4 stars. Speaking softly, Qinyang suddenly thought of something. That's right, Huan. What's the matter? Suntry Eve, can it be absorbed now? 4-star illusory god, it should be able to absorb. Fantasy Jean replied rigidly. Hearing this, Qinyang nodded and immediately made a decision. First push Gilgamesh to 5 stars, then let the illusionary god reach 4 stars, then go to Fishman Island and absorb Suntry Eve. Rise to the stars first. Chapter 0329-5-star glittering, 4-star phantom god. Rise to the stars first. Qinyang made a decision and immediately began to act. 12th transformation Gilgamesh is in the period of forced transformation, so it cannot be recovered from a long distance, so it can only come over by itself. Outside the shadow world, there is a ship on the sea in the Sabayati archipelago. I saw that the space was torn apart, and two figures walked out one after another. These two are Shadow Demon and Doflamingo. As soon as he walked out of the shadow world, Doflamingo couldn't help but ask, Shadow Demon, what does Lord Chin Emperor mean? There is not much time for dreams, what is it? You are only a reserve member now, and you are not qualified to know secrets. If you ask too many questions, Aizen-sama will come to warn you. Shadow Demon said calmly, all in all, I will disappear for a while in the future, but I will keep in touch with you. Hearing this, Doflamingo could only nod his head. Unlike other people in the outside world, he had a relatively deep contact with Dream, so he could clearly understand his position. His strength suddenly soared because Aizen used Bengyu to strengthen it casually. It can be seen that his combat power of 15 degrees is not necessary for Dream. Compared with combat power, his use for fantasy is more about power. Shadow Demon continued to say, next, I will tell you a few things first. Please speak. The first thing, the island of the dead, let you take over. The experiment of artificial zone devil fruit will continue until it is successful. You can discuss the specific situation with Robin. She is a full member, and her level is up to you. Above, although it's just a chorus, but when I wait for the contact person, she has a higher priority. Understand? Understood. Doflamingo is very depressed. What is the status of a mere woman above him? However, this kind of thought can only be thought in the bottom of my heart, complaining is absolutely not there. Not to mention Robin, even if it is a pig, Dream said it is a full member, and Doflamingo has to recognize it. Very good. The second thing, Dressrosa paid for protection, so you can't take a shot at this country. Yes. This matter, Doflamingo agreed very readily, although Dressrosa has a special relationship with his Don Quixote family, but since Dream has such an order, he has no objection. The third thing, you continue to be your Shichibukai. As long as you don't withdraw voluntarily, Marine won't dare to withdraw you. You can manage your forces well. If you have special information, you can report it to Robin and ask her to contact me. Quote. It's Robin again. Okay. Doflamingo nodded helplessly. Let's do this for now. If there are follow-up additions, I will contact you. Then, see you later. Saying that, the Shadow Demon's figure was distorted, and it instantly dissipated into a wisp of black smoke. Meanwhile, Sabayadi Archipelago. Going flying boat, Gilgamesh is sitting, drinking wine. Suddenly, a wisp of black smoke floated in front of him, condensing into the appearance of a shadow demon. Let's go. Glancing at the King of Heroes, the shadow demon stretched out his hand to tear apart the space, and the entrance to the shadow world suddenly appeared. Seeing this, Gilgamesh immediately got up and walked into the shadow world with the shadow demon. Shadow world. Qinyang raised his eyes and looked forward. The shadow demon and the King of Heroes walked side by side. There is no need for verbal communication, or even eye contact. Even if they are separated by hundreds of millions of miles, they can understand each other with a single thought. Fantastic. How many fruits does Gilgamesh need to upgrade from 4 stars to 5 stars? 35 pieces. 35. Qinyang Vivi was taken aback. Are you sure? If you remember correctly, Aizen only needs 26 to upgrade from 4 stars to 5 stars. To this, Fantasy Gene's answer was straightforward. The further back you go, the greater the consumption. Aizen is the 10th transformation, and Gilgamesh is the 12th transformation. The illusion body of the same strength, the further back, the consumption. The bigger. Quote. To put it simply, if Aizen is the 13th transformation, then the consumption of his ascension will be higher than that of Gilgamesh. Pause. Fantasy Gene said again. Furthermore, the higher the star of the illusionary god, the greater the consumption will be when a new transformation is started. Hearing this, Qinyang was speechless for a while. It seems that the fruit I get this time won't take long. It can be used for a long time. Fantasy Gene said. However, you need to find a new mysterious power. The reason why it consumes so much is because you have been using the same power. I know. What I'm worried about now is that the devil fruit I emptied from this world may not necessarily be able to open the time and space type of illusion. You can rest assured, all the fruits you swallowed will not disappear, but will be reborn. Just like a person who eats a devil fruit and then dies, the power it possesses will once again take the form of a devil fruit. It's the same as being reborn elsewhere. In other words, devil fruits are inexhaustible and inexhaustible. Qin Yang thought in surprise, but it's not worth being too happy. The more you go on, the more you consume, and in the end, you still have to find a new mysterious power. In short, let's ascend to the star first, and then go to absorb the mysterious power contained in the Sun Tree Eve. I have a hunch that it should give me a surprise. With a chuckle, Qin Yang waved his hands, rolled up 35 fruits on the ground, and threw them to Gilgamesh. With the same 4-star status, Qin Yang chose Gilgamesh instead of Aizen. The reason is very simple, because the dream has to be kept low-key and disappear for a while, but Gilgamesh can continue his activities, so the priority is to promote the hero king. As for Aizen, you can upgrade to 147 stars at any time. I started. Gilgamesh stretched out his palm and pressed it on the fruit. In an instant, one of the fruits turned into ashes. Repeat this 34 times to absorb all the fruit. Immediately, a huge mysterious power nourished the whole body, and a unique divinity began to be born in the hero king. This is not complete divinity, there is only a trace of divinity, but this trace of divinity has improved the essence of Gilgamesh's life. At the same time, the information about the 12 changes changed. 12 changes. Gilgamesh, King of Heroes. Star rating. Ability 1, King's Treasure. Ability 2, Going Armor. Ability 3, Going Flying Boat. Ability 4, Omniscient Almighty Star. Ability 5, Pioneering Stars of Deviance. As Qin Yang had expected, the 5-star ability was indeed a stray sword. However, he has no interest in caring about this for the time being. As the main body, the Phantom God, at this moment, with the 12 transformations reaching 5 stars, he has also begun to improve. The 3-star illusionary god, unconsciously, reached the 4-star level. 0 change, Phantom God. Star rating. The new ability is. Qin Yang closed his eyes and felt silently, what a peculiar ability. The 4-star ability is a perfect match for the name Phantom God, like a dream, everywhere. Chapter-321-340 Fish. The new ability born by the 4-star Phantom God is very strange. The new ability is different from illusion obliteration and illusion realization, but is similar to illusionary manipulation to some extent. The name of this ability is illusion projection. As long as anyone in the world reads the name of Emperor Qin in his mouth, Qin Yang can feel it himself, and at the same time, a thought can drop a projection. The projection has 1/3 of the combat power of the main body. If the projection dies, it will be a loss of thought for Qin Yang himself. Of course, this is Qin Yang's first impression of this ability. In fact, after a deep understanding of it, it is much more powerful. It's not just this world, projections can even come across borders, Qin Yang thought to himself. However, someone still needs to pronounce the name, Qin Emperor, and at the same time accurately indicate that this person is me. In another world, there may also be someone named Qin Emperor. If the speaker is talking about another Qin Emperor, then although Qin Yang can feel a little bit, he can't come to the past. Forget it, this ability should have other effects. I will study it later. Let's go to Fishman Island first. Thinking of this, Qin Yang took one step forward. Suddenly, the shadow world cracked open. After he walked out of it, he immediately appeared in the ocean. Surrounded by pressure-filled seawater, the overhead sunlight penetrates 100 meters of water, making it appear bleak. Illusions manifest. Qin Yang whispered, and suddenly, a transparent shield appeared around, wrapping it up, avoiding the invasion of external water pressure. Without any hesitation, Qin Yang moved quickly towards the deep sea. To be able to cross the 10,000-meter deep sea with the flesh, I am afraid that the whole world will not be able to find a second person. I am afraid that only the Fishman and the mermaid can do it. Just when Qin Yang went to Fishman Island, the whole world caused an uproar. The results of the battle of the #1 auction in the world gradually spread to the outside world, and everyone who received the news was shocked. At that time, there were hundreds of thousands of people who logged into Sabayati archipelago, but after the First World War, only a few thousand survived. I don't know how many forces perished. Even the king of a certain country was buried at the bottom of the sea. Even the alliance between the big pirates was overturned and wiped out. Even the 4 emperors, Kaido, have disappeared, and their life and death are unknown. Marine's commander-in-chief, Kong Kong, also disappeared. In order to find the bones, Marine has been cruising around the Sabayati archipelago, trying to salvage them. But there are thousands of sea beasts under the sea, and Marine simply does not dare to act recklessly. And all of this was just caused by a blow from Emperor Qin. One blow, most of the Sabayati archipelago was sunk, and even more powerful were suppressed. Fantasy Qin Emperor. Everyone knows that now that the 4 emperors are gone, the times have changed, and the future will be a new era where one emperor dominates. However, when no one was watching the show and wanted to see what the dream would do, the dream suddenly disappeared, as if it disappeared out of thin air, and no wind was heard again. There is a strange atmosphere in the world. It was very quiet, terrifyingly quiet. Even Marine and the world government were very low-key during this time, as if they were waiting for something, confirming something. Not to mention external changes. After spending a full day, Qin Yang finally found Fishman Island. Normally, if a ship is lucky, it only takes a few hours to sail from the sea to Fishman Island, which is 10,000 meters deep. But Qin Yang was crossing the body physically. He had to contend with the pressure of the deep sea, and it was easy to get lost, which took several times of time. Fishman Island at this moment, quietly observing the surroundings. Above Fishman Island, there is a huge light source, emitting bright and clear sunlight. Sun Tree Eve. This is a supergiant tree that runs through the ocean, and can transmit the sunlight on the ground to the bottom of the sea intact. There are many scholars in the world who have studied this, but it is of no use. All I can know is that the tree absorbed sunlight on the ground, and at the same time, the root of the tree was lit up. The part that glows now, like the sun on the bottom of the sea, is its root. Moreover, this tree can also perform respiration and provide oxygen, which is very mysterious. In the history of this world that can be studied, it already exists, and no one knows how old it is. Gilgamesh should be brought along, all-time almighty star. Maybe you can see something. Maybe there are secrets in this world, maybe even related to the devil fruit. Shaking his head, Qin Yang didn't think too much, and walked directly towards the root of the tree. The closer to the root of the tree, the stronger the light, but the strange thing is that the temperature is not high at all. Han, are you sure you can absorb it? Yes, the mysterious power it possesses is very huge, equivalent to 40 or 50 devil fruits. Normally, it can push a transformation to 5 stars in one breath. I absorbed its power and the sunshine from Fishman Island should be gone. Qin Yang said, although it's nothing to worry about, I think about it give Neptune a choice. Neptune, king of Fishman Island. I can help him move Fishman Island to the sea and keep it for a year in the name of a dream, or I can directly create an artificial sun under the sea. With my current strength, the artificial sun will not last long. At most 6 months, or even only a few months. Quote. The former is more troublesome, while the latter is simpler, it just depends on how the other party chooses. However, no matter what the other party chooses, Qin Yang must absorb this Yangshu Eve, and he will not inform the other party. Then, I started, absorbing such a huge mysterious power at one time. It is also the first time for me, and I expect a satisfactory result. Having said that, Qin Yang has already approached before the root of the tree. It is hard to believe that it is a tree root. A single root of this tree needs hundreds of people to hug. This is only the slender part. If it is thicker, the diameter of one root is several hundred meters. Is simply too huge. In the silence, Qin Yang stretched out his right hand, penetrated the clear sunlight, and pressed it on one of the roots. The next moment, a mysterious force that was far greater than before began to pour into his body. This mysterious power is completely different from the devil fruit. It appears clearer and gentler, like the embrace of the sea, very warm. And with Qin Yang's absorption, the light on the bottom of the sea is rapidly weakening. One moment is noon, the next moment, it seems to be dusk. And soon, the world fell into darkness. The absorption is over, it's much smoother than expected. Qin Yang said softly, and suddenly, an orange-yellow light emitted from the pocket of his chest. This is... Qin Yang was stunned and took it out subconsciously. It was a pocket watch, the loot that Doflamingo had scraped after suppressing hundreds of pirates on Cake Island. Because it has a bit of mysterious power, but it is too weak to be absorbed, so Qin Yang has kept it until now. Unexpectedly, at this time, there has been a change. The pocket watch in his hand was originally broken, but at this moment, its pointer moved quietly. Then, the orange light emitted by the pocket watch, carrying that faint mysterious power, submerged into Qin Yang's body. Huh! Qin Yang let out a sigh, and then began to transform. His body began to shrink, from human form, and quickly collapsed into a fish. A small golden fish, the size of 2 palms, is very bright in color, and the scales on it are all shining. At the same time, in Qin Yang's mind, information about the new transformation was born. 13th change, Time and Space Fish. Star Rating. Ability 1, Time is long. After getting the relevant information, Qin Yang couldn't help but widen his eyes. It turned out to be a 1-star no. It turned out to be a transformation of the time and space shuttle type. Chapter-321 Little Princess Shirahoshi. It turned out to be a rare illusion of time and space. Qin Yang was taken aback and felt even more surprised by the state he was in at the moment. Small golden fish, about 30 centimeters in length, bright in color and full of brilliance on scales. But Qin Yang couldn't feel any destructive power. Obviously not a phantom body that was good at fighting. Even, it is very weak, so weak that any deep-sea fish can swallow him in one bite. However, it's only 1 star, what's going on? Yangshu Eve, but the mysterious power equivalent to 40 or 50 fruits, and it's the first time to absorb this kind of power, even if it's not 3 stars, why shouldn't it be? 1 star. Quote. Turn on the transformation with the lowest consumption, and the probability of appearing a 2-star phantom is the highest, which can basically reach 80 to 90%, but if the consumption is increased, there is a great probability of a 3-star transformation. As for the 1-star appearance, it is a state that is even rarer than Samsung. So far, including this space-time fish, there are a total of 13 phantom bodies, and only this time has appeared. In this regard, Fantasy Jean was silent for a long time before explaining, I don't know. It's probably because of that pocket watch. Hearing this, Qin Yang swung his fishtail and moved slowly, approaching the broken watch hanging on the root of Yangshu. In the scanning state, the pocket watch has lost its mysterious power, and even the only trace has disappeared. It is just a very ordinary and worn-out watch. The rare transformation is probably because of it. Fantasy Jean added. Originally, the mysterious power contained in this watch was very weak, most likely because its power gradually faded over the long years. And you absorbed the sun tree and just activated it. Is that so? Qin Yang was noncommittal, and immediately thought about it, and a golden light was projected from his body, and then the body condensed and formed. It reached out and put away the pocket watch, and then grabbed the space-time fish in its hand, feeling it carefully. Ignore this for now. Although it's only 1 star, it's still very easy to get a star. The problem is this new transformation. At present, there are 4 full stars, and there are still many devil fruits in stock, so the problem of star promotion is not big. The first ability is, the Long River of Time, which is related to time, so it is because of the pocket watch. The pocket watch also represents time. Shaking his head, Qin was too lazy to think about this issue and put all his energy on the ability of the new transformation. After the transformation was completed, there was not much information fed back to him. He only knew what the long river of time was. As for how to use this ability, he had to explore it himself. First of all, the long river of time is really a river. No, to be precise, it is the law of time. Space-time fish can travel the long river of time, and even travel to the future. But it is impossible to swim against the current, that is to say, it is impossible to swim back from the long river of time, and all cannot go back to the past. Of course, it is also possible that the current space-time fish is too weak to resist the law of time, and can only follow it to going. But whether it's going back in time, or traveling through the future, it's not that important to me. The problem is traveling the world. Qin looked at the golden fish in his hand and muttered, however, since the star of the time-space fish is upgraded, the ability to travel through space should appear. Time and space will be combined, and then you should be able to travel through the world. Anyway, with this transformation, I finally saw a glimmer of hope. Generally speaking, Qin is very satisfied with this action, and the next step is to increase the star rating of this little fish. Until then, fix Fishman Island. Thinking of this, Qin turned his attention to the direction of Fishman Island. There, it was already pitch black. No, the entire deep sea was dark at the moment. The island is even more chaotic, whether it is fishman, mermaid, or pirates who pass by here and want to enter the new world, they are all frightened by the sudden darkness. Fishman Island, Ryugu Castle. In the hall, King Neptune is sitting on the throne of the king, and at his side is the Princess Otoji. Below, there are the three princes, as well as the left and right ministers. The great Prince Shark Star, the second Prince King Star, and the third Prince Rollover Star. Compared with the darkness of the outside world, there is a huge night pearl in the palace, which can illuminate the hall. However, Yangshu suddenly lost its light, making everyone very nervous. This is a huge problem related to survival. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside the hall, and a group of soldiers shouted with wry smiles. "Princess, don't break in, your majesty is." "Father, it's getting dark." Shirahoshi suddenly broke in and looked at everyone in the hall with curiosity. "Shirahoshi, Princess Otahime was full of love, come to mother." "Mom." Princess Shirahoshi smiled happily and rushed over. Looking at the two mothers and daughters, Neptune's face became worse and worse. "Secretary of the left, what's going on?" "Your Majesty Neptune, the sky over Fishman Island suddenly turned dark, and now the soldiers are being sent to investigate." After speaking, Minister Wright said with a worried face, "Your Majesty, it is daytime above the sea, and the time should be 2 p.m. If it is not the above problem, it must be that the sun tree has changed." "How could this be?" the great Prince Shaoxing said solemnly. "Our Fishman Island inhabited here a long time ago, and there has never been a problem with Yangshu. In historical records, there are only a few solar eclipses that occurred for a few minutes. The darkness. But now, at least 10 minutes have passed." Hearing this, everyone's faces became more and more bad. Shirahoshi also seemed to sense that the atmosphere was not right, and withdrew his smile, looking at Otahime with a pair of puzzled eyes. "Could it be that someone destroyed the Yangshu?" said the second prince. "But how could the Yangshu be destroyed? It's a huge creature. Compared with it, Fishman Island is not worth mentioning. Besides this statement, is there any other explanation?" The third prince was not very flexible, and just asked in a daze. Hearing this, Neptune took a deep breath and fell into deep thought. "Let people investigate first, and wait for the results. No matter what, it is a major crisis, and it is related to the life and death of our Fishman Island." Before the word of death fell, suddenly, a figure appeared above the hall. He appeared so suddenly, without any sign, and everyone couldn't even react. After 3 full seconds, Neptune's pupils shrank suddenly. Mr. Sea Dragon. More than a year ago, Neptune had a meeting with Hailong and was extorted by Hailong. No, I am Emperor Qin. Qin stood with his hands behind his back and looked directly at Neptune. When he caught a glimpse of Shirahoshi, Vivi was startled and chuckled, "Little Princess Shirahoshi, stay safe." "Huh, Big Brother knows me." Shirahoshi blinked his big glasses, full of doubts. "I know you, but you don't know me," Qin said with a smile. After speaking, he looked at Neptune and said calmly, "You don't need to investigate, I destroyed Yangshu Eve." Dream Emperor Qin. Neptune looked shocked. Although he lived 10,000 meters under the sea, how could he not know the name of Emperor Qin? That's the real pinnacle of this generation. "Why did you destroy Yangshu?" he said solemnly. "Our Fishman Island did not offend Dream." "You don't have to know that." Qin disdained to deceive, let alone explain, bluntly said, "For the sake of little Princess Shirahoshi, I will not watch you die. Since I destroyed the Yangshu, I will also give you a chance to save yourself. There are ways to do it. 2. 1. I will move your Fishman Island to the sea above 10,000 meters, make you an island, and protect you for a year in the name of fantasy." Quote. After a pause, he flipped his right hand, and suddenly, a dazzling little sun appeared in the palm of his hand, which was extremely shining. 2nd, I will create an artificial sun for you, which can give you light, but the artificial sun has no day and night functions, and can only last for 3 months, at most half a year. After speaking, Qin turned his hand and wiped the sun again. Choose, Neptune. Chapter 0332-4 Old Men, you want to die. Choose. Hearing Qin words suddenly, several people in the hall fell into a sluggishness. Move an island 10,000 meters from the bottom to the surface. Or, an artificial sun. No matter which one, it sounds like a fantasy. If the person who speaks is not the dreamy Qin Emperor, no one will believe even a little bit. Only the young Princess Shirahoshi, with wide eyes, could neither understand the current situation of Fishman Island nor what Qin meant. Without the entanglement of the suitor, Van der Deacon, she does not have to hide in a small ivory tower. For the past year, she has lived a carefree childhood. Qin glanced at her and couldn't help echo, saying, "Time is limited, I'll give you 1 minute to think." "Wait." Neptune said quickly. "Dream Emperor Qin, what you said is too unbelievable, I can't accept it for a while." "Really?" Qin was unmoved. "That is to say, you gave up the 2 choices I gave you." "Since that's the case." "No." Princess Yiji interrupted suddenly, and said in a clear voice, "Respected Emperor Qin, I believe what you said. Although I don't know why you want to destroy the Yangshu, I want to know, is there any possibility of repairing it? I mean yes, can the sun tree come back to shine on Fishman Island again?" This question is a good idea, because Qin has also considered this possibility. "No." After a moment of silence, Qin shook his head and said, "It may be possible to recover in a few decades, or even 100 years, but definitely not now. By the way, there are still 30 seconds. Hearing this, Princess Otoji's face was hesitant. She looked at her husband and said, "Your Majesty, this is the end, we can only let Fishman Island rise to the surface." Mother, the eldest prince said quickly, "Our mermaid tribe is arrested by human traffickers every year. If the island is raised to the surface, I am afraid things will be very bad. The average price of a young and beautiful female mermaid in the black market is 70 million to 80 million Baileys. People in the dark world will be interested in such huge profits. Fishman Island is a natural protection at 10,000 meters in the deep sea, but if it reaches the surface, this protection is lost." Shark Star. Princess Otoji sighed. "Next year is the World Conference, we can't continue to be silent and avoid, we should stand up bravely and fight for equality for the race. This world should be free, there should be no discrimination, mermaids and human beings. Fishman and human beings should coexist peacefully, and this time is our first step forward." Quote. Hearing this, Qin Yang chuckled and looked at the idealist. Princess Yi, I can express my respect for your ideal. But I don't mind if you choose the first one. I'll wait for the dream, only it will protect you for a year. After a year, you will face a great disaster. In contrast, the second option is more appropriate. The artificial sun can give Fishman Island a buffer period of 3 months, or even half a year. In the past few months, the mermaid can completely find new light sources, such as night pearls, or something else, and they can solve it. Although it can't be compared with the brightness of the sun tree or even the artificial sun, at least the island is not. It will be dark, but it will continue to survive. 1 minute has passed. At the end, Qin Yang looked at Neptune and asked, "What is your choice?" Hearing that, Neptune was at war. He looked at a few ministers, then at Princess Yi, and finally sighed. Fantasy Qin Emperor, if I were just an ordinary mermaid, I would really like to choose the first one. Because of this choice, Fishman Island may be different, but I am the king. This method is too risky. Comparing the two, the artificial sun is more secure, so I'm sorry Otami, I choose the second way. I see. Qin Yang nodded, took one step, and appeared in front of Princess Shirahoshi. Little Princess Shirahoshi, I have caused great harm to you Mermaid Island, but not maliciously. As compensation. Saying that, Qin Yang stretched out his right hand and gently pressed it on top of Shirahoshi's head. Immediately, the divine brilliance shone, as if the hand of God was stroking the devout believers and bestowed upon them the divine favor. Shirahoshi's eyes widened, and she only felt warm and comfortable, as if she had returned to her mother's placenta. Everything was so peaceful. Emperor Qin, what is this? Princess Yi asked nervously. It's divine radiance. If one day Shirahoshi is in crisis, it should keep her safe, but only once. Qin Yang smiled and touched Shirahoshi's head. Little princess, goodbye. As soon as the voice fell, his figure disappeared instantly. Everyone present was completely unable to detect the trajectory of the slightest movement. When he appeared again, Qin Yang had already come to the sky above Fishman Island. A small golden fish was swimming by Qin Yang's side, spitting bubbles in his mouth. Illusions manifest. Qin Yang closed his eyes and raised his hands high. Suddenly, above his head and palm, a blazing white sun was slowly being born. It was only the size of a fist at first, but it expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just 1 minute, it had reached a diameter of 100 meters. Artificial sun. Qin Yang gave a soft drink, and in an instant, the 100-meter little sun soared again, expanding tenfold in one breath. Instead of the sun tree Eve, it hangs on Fishman Island, bringing light to the deep sea again. A light breath. Qin Yang turned to touch the little golden fish and said to himself, I took their light and gave them back. Although it won't last long, it's kind enough. Right. Talk to yourself. Qin Yang smiled, and as soon as he moved, he was ready to leave the deep sea. But at this moment, in the dark, Qin Yang felt a particularly concerning cry. Who's saying my name? As soon as the voice fell, Qin Yang closed his eyes immediately, and a thought came directly to the past across the endless distance. Meanwhile, Marine Headquarters. In a special conference room, there is a big screen that projects the appearance of 4 old men, who are Gorosei, 5 elders. In front of the big screen, Sengoku and many other marine executives are sitting on their feet. In other words, the dream has disappeared. On the screen, the old man Jien snorted coldly. Why are you sure? How is Sora's situation? Hearing this, Sengoku lowered his head and said, At present, there are a large number of sea kings entrenched in that sea area. Our ships cannot approach, and the whereabouts of the Commander Kong are unknown. As for the disappearance of the dream, that is because of the dialogue between Emperor Qin and Whitebeard, and the great demon king of fear unintentionally leaked, and we push from this. The deduced hyphenation has not yet been exported, and suddenly, a strong wind swept through the conference room. Who is talking about this emperor's name? Along with these majestic words, the wind and waves in the room were like a vortex, whistling, and quickly condensed into a figure. Emperor Qin Garp's expression changed greatly, and he got up. It was you. Qinyang raised his eyebrows, glanced over, and finally stayed on the screen. The fifth old man. No, the fourth old man. Do you really want to die? Chapter 0333_The River of Time. Four old men. Do you really want to die? Qinyang looked at the big screen with calm eyes. The big screen, the expressions of the four Gorosei, 5 elders were stern. Although they were separated by a long distance, they were still shocked for a while. The dreamy shadow demon was enough to come and go without a trace, but Emperor Qin was more direct and suddenly appeared. And judging from the words he said when he appeared, it seemed that someone called his name. Didn't you disappear? After a full 10 seconds of silence, the old man Jian frowned. It seems that you have also obtained the information. Qinyang was unsmiling and calm. I don't know which one is talking about it. Emperor Qin. Sengoku's posture was extremely alert, and he said sternly, what are you here for? You called me by name and with malice. Qinyang glanced at him and said, however, it doesn't matter. There are many people who are malicious to me, and there is no shortage of you. Besides, I really don't have time to clean up you. Hearing this, the old man's eyes flashed, and he said, you don't have much time to dream, what do you mean? He. Qinyang chuckled twice and said, I'm not interested in chatting with you. Since I'm here, I'll give you a little warning. Marine, the world government, I will indeed disappear, but it's not that I can't return. Just like now, I can come at any time. You better watch out, and pray that you don't annoy me. As he said that, he waved his hand, and suddenly, the entire conference room shook violently, as if being slapped by an invisible force, and the entire space shook. Doflamingo and Nicole Robin are the reserve members and full members of our dream. As long as you take action against them, it will be regarded as a challenge to us. At that time, someone will naturally come to clean you up. This, Gorosei, 5 elders, faces turned black, and they were threatened in such a face, and they simply ignored the world government. Of course, the other party does have this qualification. Also, the undead island belongs to our dream territory. The airspace above it and the 100-mile sea area belong to the dream's sphere of influence. If you step in without permission, there will naturally be a master to annihilate you. That's all you have to say. Sengoku was furious, but could only hold back. The third and last one. Qinyang shook his head and said softly, Fishman Island, please take care of your Tenryubito in the Holy Land. If anyone dares to log into Fishman Island, I will go to the Holy Land and slaughter the 20 tribes of that year. Then, goodbye, everyone. As soon as the voice fell, Qinyang's illusion projection turned into a wisp of breeze and dissipated in an instant. As soon as he left, Sengoku was furious at the table, too deceiving. Gorosei, 5 elders were also uncertain, their eyes flickering, obviously irritated by Qinyang's words. A long time, the long-bearded old man said solemnly, go back and warn Tenryubito that from today onwards, Fishman Island is a forbidden land. Heavenly Dragon Forbidden Land, of course, is just a rhetoric. Fishman Island is 10,000 meters under the sea. If you want to go there, you have to risk the ship's destruction and death. How could Tenryubito, who cherished his life like gold, go to Fishman Island casually? Qinyang said this, just to express an attitude. Above Fishman Island, below the artificial sun. Qinyang opened his eyes and retracted the projection. It's done, let's go. With a chuckle, Qinyang picked up the little golden fish, dodged, and hurried towards the sea. Coming here is difficult, but going back is much easier. Qinyang went straight up, and an hour later, he returned to the sea. Stepping on the sea water out of thin air, Qinyang watched for a while. This is not the place where he dived, and of course it is not the New World. In front of his vision, he can see the Red Earth continent. Next, there is one more thing to do, Qinyang thought to himself. Heavenly Divine Kingdom, or a certain country in Sky Island, their saintess, as the buyer of the first blueprint, even wanted to go back on it after losing the blueprint. As a seller, Qin Yang of course had to ask for debts. However, this matter is not urgent, the country is there anyway and cannot escape. Instead of asking for debt, I'll try your ability first. Qin Yang looked down at the golden fish, and then gently threw him into the sea. Studying while walking. Immediately, Qin Yang stepped on the sea and headed towards the Red Earth continent. And most of his mind was placed on the golden fish. A small fish swimming in the sea is a very ordinary fish. At most, the scales have a special brilliance, and there is not much strangeness. Long time. Qin Yang controlled the space-time fish, and with a thought, he activated his ability immediately. Immediately, above the 9 heavens, a silver river slowly flowed over the top of his head. The river is so wide that it can't see the end at a glance, and its length is even more difficult to measure, as if connecting from one side of the sky to the other. However, Qin Yang couldn't see such a miraculous scene, only the little golden fish could see it. This is the river of time. Qin Yang raised his head, and a pair of round fish eyes stared at him. After pondering for a while, he flicked his fish tail, and suddenly jumped out of the sea, as if a fish leapt over a dragon gate, and even vacated, with a thud, and plunged into the long river of time and space. Woohoo! Time is like water. The river water flows through the body of the space-time fish, but it bounces off the moment it touches the scales. Because of these fish scales, can you swim in the laws of time? Qin Yang muttered in surprise. However, he soon realized that he could not resist the impetus of the river. He couldn't go against the current, he couldn't even stop, he could only move forward slowly along the river of time. It's kind of interesting. Qin Yang was very interested and swung the fish's tail violently. Suddenly, the space-time fish accelerated forward. At the moment of acceleration, Qin Yang's body above the sea couldn't help but look startled. In his perception, 2 kinds of time flow rate appeared. It was as if the main body and the phantom body were at different points in time. This feeling was not obvious at first, but as the speed of the space-time fish became faster, the sense of disobedience became stronger and stronger. This is the shuttle to the future. Qin Yang pondered for a moment, but shook his head. No, this is just the time-space fish entering the acceleration channel of time. It should be the moment when it leaves the long river of time that it truly enters the future. Now that he thought of this, Qin Yang immediately followed suit. In the long river, the time and space fish suddenly accelerated and jumped out of the river 5.1. In the next moment, the color of the world changed, and the world was spinning. It was as if the whole world was collapsing, a real collapse. Even Qin Yang's body collapsed instantly under this force. The world is broken into powder, but the new world is being reconstructed. I do not know how long it has been. Above the sea is full of waves. Qin Yang rubbed his brows, with a painful expression on his face, like an ordinary person riding a crazy roller coaster, his head still dizzy. Even me is like this, traveling through the future, ordinary people can't bear it at all. Muttering softly in his mouth, Qin Yang finally recovered. He looked up and looked around. It was still seawater, it was still the red soil continent. The sky is still the same, the white clouds are floating, and the sound of the rushing waves rang in my ears, and it seems that nothing has changed. How long has it been? How long? Chapter 0334, Supernova, Trafalgar Law. How long has it been? How long? Qin Yang stood on the seawater and stared blankly around. There is not much change, or, because I am in the boundless ocean, I cannot feel the change. Find a way to confirm the time first. Thinking of this, Qin Yang immediately released his perception. 100 meters, 1 kilometer, 3,000 meters. After exploring the distance of 10 nautical miles in all directions, I could barely feel a trace of human breath. It's a ship, it should be a pirate ship, very good. Qin Yang, Vivi Isho, stepped on the sea. As soon as he took a step, he made a smooth move at the same time, and suddenly, the golden fish jumped out of the sea and lay on his shoulders with a puff. Qin Yang wanted to take the golden fish back, but the feedback was that the space-time fish was in a forced transformation period. This is very interesting, because according to perception, he has traveled to the future for at least a few months, or even a year later, and the mere 7-day forced transformation period should have passed, but in fact he did not, so Qin Yang it is inferred that the shuttle to the future and the forced transformation period do not affect each other. However, these are minor issues that are not worth mentioning. At the same time Qin Yang stepped out of the sea, 10 nautical miles away, a pirate ship was riding the wind and waves and sailing slowly. The pirate ship is not big, with a displacement of less than 1,000 tons. At this moment, on the deck of the pirate ship, more than a dozen pirates stared at the sea. "Captain, is this the legendary Great Root?" The speaker was a woman, and the only one, with a hunting hat on her head, a sexy figure, and a look of excitement on her face. "The legendary pirate grave. We entered the Great Root from the North Blue and we had a storm right away and the climate and magnetic field here are weird. Wait, there's a situation ahead." Suddenly, a burly man spoke in a low voice. He held a telescopic lens and looked at the sea in front of him. "No, it's impossible." The man was horrified and said incredulously, "It's actually walking on the sea." "What's wrong?" the captain asked suspiciously. He is a young man, aged 24, wearing a furry winter hat with leopard spots, dark bags under his eyes and 2 small gold earrings in his ears. Of course, the most conspicuous thing is that this captain is holding a very long sword. This sword is called Ghost Cry. Hearing the captain's question, the burly man swallowed and said in horror, "Monster. There is a monster walking on the sea and coming towards us, the distance is." His words stopped abruptly, and in the telescopic mirror, the figure walking on the sea suddenly disappeared. Dazzled, the man said blankly. Hearing this, the rest of the crew rolled their eyes. "Raji, what are you doing? Is it a mirage?" "Idiot, that's a desert scene." A group of people chatted easily again. "C is less than or equal to." Only Raj himself was surprised, holding a telescope and searching around. He. Suddenly, a series of light laughter sounded. In the conversation, this laughter was not unique, but everyone's body froze. The captain's face changed slightly, his muscles were tense, he hesitated a little, and turned around slowly. At a glance, the captain's pupils shrank even more. "Be alone." A young man in white clothes, handsome in appearance, ethereal in temperament, with a slight smile hanging from the corner of his mouth, and a small goldfish lying on his shoulders. At this moment, the other party looked at everyone on his side with great interest. "Who are you?" The captain looked shocked. The rest of the members also reacted one by one, and subconsciously took a few steps back. "Don't be nervous, I have no ill will. If there is ill will, you will be dead before you see me." Qin Yang calmly swept over a dozen people on the boat, and then looked at the pirate flag on the sail, thoughtfully. "What pirate group are you?" Hearing this, Raj said in a terrified voice, "We are the Heart Pirates. I'm Raj, he's Captain Luo, this is Shaki, he's Pekin." Before he could finish speaking, Qin Yang interrupted, "Are you Luo? No wonder it looks familiar." He looked at the captain. Luo frowned, "Who are you? Do you know me?" "Of course, I know the Red Star Pirates, and I know you are Trafalgar Law." Qin Yang said thoughtfully, "I didn't expect you to be so old. How many years is the Sea Circle calendar now?" "You're so old, mean." Luo looked surprised. Had he seen each other when he was a child? "You don't even know how many years it is now. Tell me." Qin Yang naturally carried a sense of majesty. With just 3 words, Luo suddenly shook, as if he would die at any time if he didn't answer. "It's Sea Circle Calendar 1520. Quote. 1520. Qin Yang was taken aback immediately. Although he had expected it when he saw Luo, he was still shocked when he actually learned about it. An instant, 9 years have passed. Before crossing, it was Sea Circle Calendar 1511. For him, it was really just a few minutes. Suddenly, Qin Yang felt a little vicissitudes. With a sigh, he thought helplessly, next time I have to pay attention. I didn't expect the power of time to be so great. Thinking of this, Qin Yang quickly adjusted his mood and then asked, where is this place? This is the Great Route, replied one of the crew members. Nonsense, of course I know. What I'm asking is, which sea area of the Great Route is this? Which sea area? Someone was stunned. I don't know. We have just entered the Great Route. Are you a senior? Are you a big pirate of the Great Route? Hearing this, Qin Yang was startled again. Just entered the Great Route, that is this the entrance? It's so mysterious. At the same time as I traveled through the future, I also traveled from one end of the planet to the other. 377 Qin Yang slandered in his heart. He was in the sea area of Sabayati Archipelago before, and this is the sea area of Inverted Mountain at the entrance, which can be said to be two places in the world. Shaking his head, Qin Yang ignored this for the time being and instead asked, who is ruling the world now? Dominate the world. Luo didn't know why. I mean, what's wrong with Marine? Is it still the world government that rules the world? Qin Yang felt tired. The world government is of course the strongest, but I heard that there is a revolutionary army that has formed a revolutionary freedom alliance with more than 50 members in the allied countries, which is a powerful force against the world government. Luo said in a deep voice, while secretly thinking about the origin of the person in front of him. Qin Yang nodded, feeling slightly dissatisfied with the progress of the revolutionary army. It's been 9 years, and there are only 50 countries. The progress is too slow. Forget it. Compared to this, Qin Yang shook his head and said, who is the current pirate emperor? How many are there? Who are Shichibukai? What about Marine Admiral? Has old Sengoku retired? Hearing this, Trafalgar Law was dumbfounded. Who is this man? Open your mouth as the 4 emperors, Shichibukai, Marine Admiral. And also called Marshal Marine, old Sengoku. Who are you? Who are you? Seeing this, Qin Yang raised his eyebrows and said playfully, who am I? When I swept an era, you were still a runny kid. Chapter 0335 _ That's a Legend. 9 years passed in an instant, which made Qin Yang feel quite vicissitudes. It's not that things are human beings, it's just a bit of a headache. After 9 years have passed, ghosts know what the world looks like now. Thinking of this, Qin Yang said, who am I? You don't need to know, go back to the question I just asked. Saying that, Qin Yang's eyes narrowed, and in an instant, a huge spiritual pressure enveloped the entire sea area. Boom! The sea suddenly surged, and the waves were surging. It was a bright and cloudless climate, and suddenly there was a kind of power that was about to come. The small pirate ship, in front of this huge momentum, seemed very powerless, like a flat boat in the sea, constantly being beaten by the waves. It would roll over and sink at any time. The more than a dozen crew members of the Red Heart Pirates were all pale. Captain Luo was the closest and was under the greatest pressure. Standing in front of Qin Yang, he felt like a baby facing an ancient beast. Senior, I'll answer your question. Teeth, Luo hurriedly said, the pirate emperor you mentioned should be the 4 emperors in the second half of the Great Route of King's Landing. 4 more. Qin Yang was stunned for a moment, and his aura recovered. Whitebeard, Redhead, who else? Big Mom pirates, although he let it go, but his vitality was severely damaged, and it was not easy to return to the position of the 4 emperors. As for Kaido, he was slammed into the bottom of the sea with his palm. No matter how amazing his resilience, it would be difficult for him to return to the sea alive. Of course, Qin Yang was not sure whether the other party was dead or not. After all, it was known as the strongest creature that no one could kill. Apart from Whitebeard and Redhead, the other 4 emperors are Big Mom and Beastmaster. Luo replied. Hearing this, Qin Yang was immediately startled. That woman Charlotte can still return to the position of the 4 emperors. Yes, she's really tenacious. But, forget her, what is the Beastmaster? Kaido. The Beastmaster is the name, and the captain of the Beastmaster pirates is called Ryan. Interesting, this guy can take Kaido's place. Chin-young raised his eyebrows with interest. Where's Marine? On the Marine side, the current marshal is Sengoku, and the three admirals are Akainu, Kizaru, and Fujitora. Wait. Chin-young rubbed his eyebrows. Where's Kuzan? Did you say the original Marine Admiral Kuzan? Luo replied in an uncertain tone. A year ago, Kuzan quit Marine because of a certain matter. It was just gossip. Marine blocked the intelligence about this matter. What is it specifically? The reason is unknown. Quote. Fujitora was. No surprise, it should be Isho, the blind man who Sabayati archipelago appeared. Dao. Question is Kuzan, how did this guy suddenly leave Marine? The world has changed a lot. It seems that something major happened inside Marine. Chin-young pondered. There were some guesses in his heart, but he was not sure. However, none of these matters. Fujitora or Kuzan, to him, is just a Marine admiral, no difference. Although 9 years have passed and the world has become a little different, it has generally not exceeded expectations. The only thing that made him dissatisfied was that after 9 years of development, the Revolutionary Army had only united more than 50 countries, and the progress was too slow. Contact Robin first and ask her to report on the specific situation in recent years, and then find Monkey D. Long. Thinking of this, Chin-young suddenly thought that since Luo Kai of the Heart Pirates entered the Great Route, it means that Monkey D. Luffy is about to come to this pirate grave. And if Luffy wants to come to the Great Route, he must pass through Logatown, and the dragon will take a look at his son. It's very close to Logatown, so if that's the case, stop by and take a look. If you can find a dragon, that's the best thing. It doesn't matter if you don't encounter it. It doesn't take much time to go back and forth at such a distance. After making a plan in his heart, Chin-young looked at Luo and said, I am very satisfied that you can answer truthfully. What else do you want to ask, senior? Luo whispered, and at the same time, he also had some guesses about Chin-yang's identity. As for his thoughts, Chin-young was too lazy to shut him up, waved his hand, and said, no need. It is a fate to meet in the vast ocean. If you encounter danger one day, you can call my name, and I can save it. See you once, see you later. After speaking, Chin-young turned around and left, stepping out in one step, and the figure disappeared instantly. Able person, suddenly disappeared. The fruit ability of the Space Department. Or some other strange ability. You two idiots, I usually let you exercise your eyesight. It's just that you move very fast, faster than your naked eyes. Several crew members talked to each other. However, what does this man's last sentence mean? Raj looked at the captain and said, why save us, call his name, we don't even know what his name is. What do you think, Captain? Luo raised his head, looked at the direction in which Chin-young disappeared, and said softly, I probably know who he is. Who is he? He looks like a very terrifying powerhouse. The 4 emperors, Marine, Admiral, etc., they all know him. Someone asked curiously. That's a legend. Luo murmured, then shook his head. What happened today, just pretend it didn't happen. We will meet him again sooner or later. Chin-young walked in the direction of the Red Earth continent. After he got away from the Red Heart pirates, he thought, and suddenly a white light was projected in front of him. The white light flew into the air, quickly elongated, and condensed into a 100-meter dragon. The giant dragon was pitch black, and Chin-young jumped onto the dragon head in a flash. For words, the giant dragon drove the man, flicked its tail, and flew away. Trafalgar Law has just entered the Great Passage, which means that this is the point in time when the worst times have just begun to emerge. Chin-young stood on the dragon's head and stared at the Red Earth continent. In 9 years, I am afraid that the world has begun to forget the existence of dreams. Don't be in a hurry to show up, find the dragon first, ask about the situation of the Revolutionary Army, and then contact Robin. For Emperor Ryan, this person is very interesting, he dares to be called Beast King. Qin Yang stood with his hands behind his back, smiling. Go to Logatown first. Roar. The sea dragon let out a long-lost dragon roar, and after roaring, it immediately crossed the red soil continent, and entered the East Blue airspace from above. East Blue is the weakest, but there have been many strong players here. One of the most famous characters is the pinnacle of the last era, One Piece King of Pirates Gul D. Roger. And Roger's execution place is Logatown. Just as Qin Yang was over the upside-down mountain, in East Blue, near the entrance of the Great Airway, there was a town. This town is Logatown. At this moment, in the port of Logatown, a pirate with a reward of 30 million, leading his pirate group, landed. Luffy. Chapter 0336 _ the beginning of everything. Second update .. The update is late. Some people want to know what the reason is for me this time. In fact, I just fell asleep ORZ. A reward of 30 million Bailey is offered. This level of bounty, placed in the New World, is the cannon fodder among the cannon fodder. Even in the first half, it is just too ordinary. Even in the South, West, and North Seas, a reward of 30 million is nothing. Only in East Blue, pirates with a grade of 30 million can be regarded as one of the best. At this moment, in Logatown in East Blue, a pirate with a bounty of up to 30 million has quietly entered the port. The pirate's name is Monkey D. Luffy, the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. As a pirate group that has just been established, except for the captain, there are 4 people in this pirate group. Sailor Nami, Sniper Usopp, Swordsman Roronoa Zoro, Chef Vinsmoke Sanji. Soon as they landed in port, Captain Luffy ran away in the blink of an eye. This guy really ran to see the execution platform. Swordsman Zoro couldn't help shaking his head. Maybe he will get lost. Does he know how much his head is worth? Let him go. Sanji said gracefully. Miss Nami, please let me accompany you around here, not with these idiots who don't understand Feng Qing. Yes, you don't have to follow me. The only woman. Nami rolled her eyes and smiled. Then, see you in 520. Quote. Wait for me, Miss Nami. Watching the two walk away one after another, the long-nosed man's mouth twitched and he was speechless for a while. Zoro, it looks like we're walking together. I need to buy a handy sword. Zoro glanced at Usopp and immediately walked over. You can stay here and watch the boat. What a joke. Wait, let's go. A small group of pirates, with several members acting independently. At the corner of the port, a sailor flipped through the wanted notice, and after confirming that he had not identified the wrong person, he quietly dialed a number. After a while, the call was connected. Colonel Smoka, found an important target. It's the Straw Hat. Meanwhile, in the heart of Logatown, there is an execution square. 20 years ago, One Piece King of Pirates Gul D. Roger died here. His words before his death started the era of the great pirates. It can be said that this is the beginning of it all. And now, after Roger's death, Qin Yang, who swept through an era, also came here. The square was very crowded, and in front of a large building similar to a city hall stood an old execution platform. Recognition failed. Please reprocess the image, or change to a better image resource. Chapter 0337 _ He is back. The third update _ the book review area started to explode again. It's like an appointment. Come and tell me about water. I'm really sorry. It's really a bit watery. It is necessary to delay a wave and explain the background in 9 years. So, if there is a big brother who abandoned the book, I would like to thank you for your support along the way. I hope to meet you in the next book. Thank you very much . Emperor Qin. Straw Hat Luffy thought for a moment, then started yelling, Let go of me. What is this strange light piece? While shouting, he tried to struggle, but the ghost road of number 61 was far from something that a pirate of his level could resist. Qin Yang sat casually and looked at each other calmly. Don't struggle, it's impossible for you to break free. I just told you to stay honest, it won't be long before your father will come to you. Who is my daddy? Do I have a daddy? Straw Hat Luffy was still fighting, but it was all in vain. Your father is. Just as Chin Yong was about to say something, he suddenly turned his eyes and looked directly in front of the execution platform. There are guests here. Outside the square, a large group of Marines came running fast. These Marines divided the crowd and made a passage. Colonel Marine with a cigar and short silver hair came riding a wild motorcycle. Pirate, Straw Hat Luffy. Amidst the harsh braking sound, the colonel jumped out of the locomotive with great momentum. He pulled out a seastone stick from his waist and walked slowly to the execution platform. Just looking at it, his face couldn't help but be startled. What's the matter? The Straw Hat, Luffy, who was the target, was stuck in the air by 6 beams of light, unable to move. The colonel was a little dazed and couldn't help but look at the soldier beside him. Tell me. Yes, Colonel Smoka. In fact, I didn't see the specific situation clearly, but Luffy in the Straw Hat tried to climb up the execution platform, was beaten down by the people above, and then tried to fly over, and the result is now. Soldiers saluted with their heads held high, and answered very quickly. Anyone up there? Smoka narrowed his eyes and looked behind Luffy in the Straw Hat. Sure enough, on the platform, he saw a young man sitting cross-legged. The man was dressed in white and had a unique temperament. If he didn't look at it, he wouldn't even be able to feel the breath of the other party. Your Excellency, hand over the bounty. Straw Hat Luffy. Smokey took a few steps forward, breathing in smoke. I'm Colonel Marine here. He. Chin Yong smiled and said, just a colonel, but if you want a Straw Hat Luffy, I'll give it to you. Saying that, Chin Yong slowly raised his hand and patted it in the air. Boom. An invisible force, the pusher Straw Hat Luffy, smashed towards Smoka. Seeing this, Smoka's eyes narrowed, but he didn't expect this person to speak so easily. Immediately, he grabbed it with a palm, and suddenly thick white smoke rose up. The smoke condensed into a big hand and grabbed towards the flying Straw Hat. White man. A capable one. Straw Hat Luffy gritted his teeth and wanted to break free. However, the restraint of the 6-stand light prison was definitely not something he could resist. The next moment, the hand of the thick white mist had already caught it. Caught. Smokey grinned Isho, and was about to unload the impact, but at this moment, his expression changed slightly. Straw Hat Luffy was like a huge cannonball. It broke through his big white man hand in one breath, and hit his body directly. PFF'd. Smoka's face turned pale, he vomited blood, and his whole body was smashed into the air. Impossible, I'm Logia. Boom. The two rolled into the crowd one after another, and immediately, countless onlookers retreated. The Colonel of East Blue, even hockey doesn't know. Chin Yong chuckled and shook his head, it's really boring. Hockey. Smoka covered her mouth and stared at Chin Yong on the platform panting, who are you? In this regard, Chin Yong was too lazy to answer, the old god was sitting on the platform. Fourth of the Tao, this rope. The chant ended, and in an instant, in front of Chin Yong, a golden rope made of spiritual energy quickly moved towards the Straw Hat Luffy. The speed of the golden light rope was extremely fast, and in an instant, the Straw Hat Luffy was captured, and then with a slight pull, the straw hat flew backwards in Chin Yang's direction. I still use this guy, so I can't give it to you for the time being. Who the hell are you? Smoka looked shocked. It was the first time he saw such a character, and just sitting there brought him absolute pressure. A master like you will not be unknown in East Blue. Are you a pirate who came back from the Great Route? He's Chin. Suddenly, a voice full of sword intent came. Chin Yong Bibi was stunned for a moment, and immediately looked at it, only to see a ruthless man with a short beard, a black top hat, and a large black knife on his back walking over from the square. Hawkeye. Smoka's eyes widened, and he said in surprise, there was information before, I heard that you came to East Blue from the Great Route, I didn't expect you to appear in such a place. For this, Hawkeye didn't seem to hear it, completely ignoring the existence of Smoka. He walked step by step, a pair of eagles pretending to be sharp eyes, but firmly locked on Qin on the platform. I didn't expect to see a living legend in a place like this, he said softly, but a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Qin said calmly, Shichibukai, eagle eye. Emperor Qin. Hawkeye's fighting intent was Ling Ran. You have disappeared for such a long time, the world has forgotten you, and even thought you would never appear again, but I have a hunch that I will meet you sooner or later. Really? In the past 9 years, I have been honing my sword intent, challenging kendo masters everywhere, and I have become a veritable number one in the world. Qin was unmoved, still looking at each other calmly. Hawkeye's fighting intent became more and more high-pitched. Unfortunately, the one I met was not the ruler of the ocean, but since it was Emperor Qin, I couldn't help but ask for advice. Saying that, he suddenly pulled out the black knife on his back. This is my strongest blow in 9 years. As soon as the voice fell, the raised black knife suddenly fell. The slash of the real world's greatest swordsman is the slash of the strongest swordsman who has fully matured. Boom. The sword energy was black and red, like a crescent moon, slashing towards Qin. This slash is a sword that Hawkeye has learned all his life and has devoted all his strength to. Whoosh. Just the aftermath of the sword energy caused a gust of wind, and the sword energy was raging. Thousands of people in the square were blown upside down by the wind. At this moment, the slash swept across, and the crowds on both sides were easily fanned away like fallen leaves. Facing this blow, Qin sat firmly on the high platform, and 5.9 just slowly stretched out 2 fingers and slashed a little. You're still too young. Boom. The terrifying sword touched Qin fingertips, but it seemed that he had encountered the hardest thing in the world, and it was difficult to get close. The black crescent slash was consuming violently and vibrating constantly, but Qin expression remained the same. This how is it possible? Smoka looked horrified, and the whole person was stupid. Who is Hawkeye? King Shichibukai is the strongest, and can be called the invincible existence under the 4 emperors, and the admiral of the headquarters has nothing to do with him. He is the number 1 swordsman in the world, a figure who stands at the absolute pinnacle of kendo. The sword of such a top master was actually blocked by 2 fingers. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Smoka would not have believed it. Emperor Qin. Suddenly, he remembered 8 or 9 years ago, the legendary figures that had been sealed in history, even by myths. Dream Emperor Qin, he's back. Chapter 0338 Sengoku's Panic. Dream Emperor Qin. Smoka remembered the legends of the past. According to legend, the world had a period of dark years. During those years, the world was shrouded in a huge shadow, and even the world government was afraid of this legend. Legend has it that the former 4 emperors, Kaido, died at the hands of this man. Legend has it that the Sabayati archipelago was once a fertile island, but under the blow of this man, it shattered into the present 13 areas. Dream is back. Smoka's heart shook, and the whole person fell into a sluggishness. Luffy, the straw hat bound by the rope, was completely confused. Dream Emperor Qin, who is it? I always feel like I've heard it before, but I don't seem to have heard it before. Not to mention the reactions of others, Qin blocked the slash with 2 fingers. The huge black crescent quickly lost its strength, condensed into a sword energy, and could not break through Qin defense. In the end, the slash broke with a bang. It turned into several strands and hit the quartet. Boom boom boom. Immediately, the shattered sword energy overflowed and swept across many buildings. In an instant, the houses around the square collapsed. Seeing this, Hawkeye slowly put away the long sword, and there is no surprise for this result. He didn't think about the idea of, I can win, but only with the idea of, measure yourself, will he cut out his strongest sword. As expected of Emperor Qin, Hawkeye said loudly, how does my sword compare to 10 years ago? Hearing this, Qin looked calm and said, this sentence should be judged by Heilong. You take me as a force measuring stone, do you think you can be safe and sound? As soon as the voice fell, a dragon roar sounded outside the sky, and the next moment, a black dragon flew near. Hawkeye was shocked, his eyes narrowed slightly, only to feel a huge black shadow approaching quickly, and then a claw grabbed towards him. Ocean Master. Hawkeye is full of nature, full of fighting spirit. You three-legged cat, you still want to fight Emperor Qin. Ben Long is here to try you. The sea dragon spit out human words, grabbed the eagle eye with one claw, and then the dragon body flew, walking close to the ground, and escaping into the distance. Dragon. Straw Hat Luffy's eyes burst with intense interest. It's a dragon. Dragon legends are not uncommon, but real dragons are extremely rare. Straw Hat Luffy was very excited. Seeing his expression, Smoka immediately dripped with cold sweat. This idiot, he doesn't even know who that dragon is. This is the ruler of the ocean, the top-level existence of the four emperors. At this moment, he was completely sure that the dream really came back. Qin Emperor is not the only one who came back. I am afraid that all the members of the dream will return. Marine, Smoka shudders at the thought of the rumored Dark Ages. 1510 was blocked by the world government, and information about that year was classified. Report to headquarters first. No, you have to leave alive first. Smoka thought to himself that he had forgotten about the arrest of Luffy. Dreams are the most important thing. As if seeing his thoughts, Qin Yang smiled at him, but Qin Yang was not interested in dealing with little people. Don't hide, I can sense you. Come out. Ha ha ha, as expected of Emperor Qin, as soon as I got close, you found out. Was laughter, and a hurricane followed throughout Loga Town. Powerful wind and waves swept across the town, converged towards the square, and finally set off a near-ground tornado with the execution platform as the center. I said goodbye 9 years ago. I didn't expect to see Emperor Qin again. Inside the tornado, a figure slowly appeared. The man was wearing a green coat and hood and had a unique tattoo on his face. Monkey D. Long, you make me very dissatisfied. Qin Yang looked indifferent. In 9 years, have I waited for the assistance of the dream? No, Dream's assistance to the Revolutionary Army has exceeded the 100 billion promised back then. Long said solemnly. Saying that, he glanced at Luffy, the Straw Hat. Since there is no such thing, what are you doing? Qin Yang snorted coldly. In 9 years, you only came up with one, Revolutionary Freedom Alliance. There are only 50 member states. Long was helpless for Qin Yang's reprimand. The other party is the helper. It can be said that most of the funds and arms of the Revolutionary Army are provided by dreams. In front of Emperor Qin, he does not talk about his strength. Just this, he is born short. A lot has happened in between, and our expansion has hit a plateau, as it was a few years ago. Long was silent for a moment, then said, I don't know, did Emperor Qin know about the departure of Admiral Kuzan a few years ago? Hearing this, Qin Yang raised his eyebrows. What happened? Kuzan broke away from Marine and joined a pirate group. Long sighed and said, the reason for this is that at that time, the world government used national treasures and had a war with our Revolutionary Army. In the battle, there were countless casualties, and our Revolutionary Army was severely damaged. Quote. He added, Kuzan stepped down as admiral, this is the introduction, and later, he became a pirate. Put Kuzan aside first, national treasures are what Qin Yang cares about. What is a national treasure? Qin Yang asked with his eyes narrowed. That is the cornerstone of the government's rule of the world, and it is an absolute power comparable to ancient weapons. Meanwhile, Marine headquarters. In the marshal's office, Sengoku sat behind his desk, flipping through recent documents. Suddenly, a figure rushed in a panic. It's a big deal, Marshal. Fuck you, what are you doing? Sengoku frowned and scolded. What happened? A communication from East Blue. The messenger stammered. Dream appeared. Dream. Sengoku Vivi froze for a moment, then his pupils shrank suddenly. The dream you're talking about is that one? Yes. It was 9 years ago. The contact person was Colonel Smoka, and Emperor Qin appeared in Logatown. Impossible. 9 years. Why did they show up? Sengoku stood up and put his hands on the table, full of disbelief. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. It's unreasonable for them to appear again after only 9 years. According to the analysis of the think tank of the world government, every time the dream appears, it is at least a few hundred years apart, otherwise it is absolutely unreasonable. Because in the historical records, in the past 100 years, there is no trace of dream activity at all. It can only be said that the time interval between each appearance of the dream is very long, and it is extremely difficult to find clues from history. Are you sure? How could they show up again? Emperor Qin, is it just similar in appearance? No, in addition to Emperor Qin, there is also the ruler of the ocean. Hearing this, Sengoku froze all over, and sat back dumbfounded. Emperor Qin may admit that he was wrong, but it is impossible for the master of the ocean to admit his mistake. It is a black dragon, and even a blind man will not admit his mistake. What are these lunatics doing? Sengoku was terrified in his heart, and his body began to tremble slightly. After 9 years, he felt the same feeling again. No, we must expand Marine's combat power immediately, and the world is recruiting. Top experts must be recruited from the common people. Thinking of this, Sengoku hurriedly picked up the phone bug and dialed the number of the Holy Land Mariajoy. Not long after, several shocking words rang out from the Gorosei, 5 elders' offices of the world government. Impossible. Will they show up again? 9 years, why on earth? Emperor Qin is back. Chapter-321-340 Fruits _ Second update by the way group number 230,131,998. There are also update times, usually one in the morning, one at 6 or 7 in the evening, and one at 11:30 in the evening. Many times, I update but the phone has lag. Also, if there is no update in the morning, it will definitely be updated in the afternoon, roughly like this ORZ. Emperor Qin reappears, the dream returns. This information is like a thunderbolt on the ground, stirring the nerves of the world government. Considering that the information came from East Blue, Gorosei, 5 elders and others did not spread the news, but blocked the information, and asked Marine to restrain and keep a low profile recently, and to confirm the authenticity of the information first. At the same time, Marineford, the headquarters of Marine, recruited people with righteous hearts from the people, opened the world's military recruitment, and expanded its military force. Not to mention the nervousness of Marine and world government, East Blue, Logatown. In the center of the square, inside the tornado, Qinyang and Long were talking. That is to say, the national treasure, in the hands of the government is the King of Heaven, Uranus, one of the 3 ancient weapons. Qinyang asked as if to confirm. This is just a guess. Because in that battle, a main force of our revolutionary army was completely wiped out. Long shook his head and said, but we learned a piece of information that the government used the national treasure at a heavy price, which seems to be related to the lifespan. Related. In the First World War, the Revolutionary Army suffered heavy losses, and the world government also paid a lot of money, so it has maintained a wonderful peace until now. After listening to his words, Qinyang suddenly had some speculation. Unlocking the national treasure is related to lifespan. No wonder the world government needed the fruit of surgery at the beginning, because the fruit of surgery can be used for eternal surgery, giving the object the life of immortality. Unfortunately, the fruit of the operation has now been eaten, and that person is Trafalgar Law. Maybe can use Luo as bait. Qinyang pondered in his heart, and immediately flicked his fingers, and immediately, the straw hat Luffy under the execution platform was freed again. Your son will be returned to you. As he said that, a wisp of black smoke flashed in front of Qinyang's body, quickly condensing into the appearance of a shadow demon. As soon as it appeared, the shadow demon immediately ripped apart the space and opened the entrance to the shadow world. Qinyang stepped into it, and before leaving, he looked back at Long again. I am very dissatisfied with your work. Next, you will speed up your expansion. If there is still no progress. Long did not hear the latter words, because Qin Yang had disappeared. Breath, Long looked down at the straw hat and murmured inwardly, the return of these murderers will bring chaos to the world again. This time, I'm afraid the world government will be over. The national treasure can be used against the revolutionary army, but certainly not against the dream. Of course, Qin Yang asked him to speed up the expansion, and he had to agree, otherwise Dream would turn around and deal with their revolutionary army. New World, Mysteria. On the top floor of a church building, there is a large conference room. In the main seat of the meeting, there were two people, a man and a woman, who were Nicole Robin and Doflamingo. Below the two, there are more than a dozen large and small cadres reporting some tasks. Among these are several members of the Don Quixote family, but more often, new members who have joined over the years. No, to be precise, the Don Quixote family is a thing of the past. This is an organization under the command of 10th Blades, which is barely a dreamy peripheral organization. The above is the general situation. A cadre sat down and said respectfully, Furfurfur Marine wants to revoke my Shichibukai title. Doflamingo let out a low laugh. There have been several consecutive Shichibukai meetings, and I have not been called. It seems that Lord Chindi has been absent all year round, which makes them start to move. Miss Robin, what do you think? Nicole Robin nodded, but did not express her opinion. Although she was above Doflamingo in terms of status, it was not necessary, she would not care, she would not forget the dreamy kindness, which represented, is a dream benefit. At this moment, in the conference room, a black wind whistled. Plumes of black smoke began to gather, forming a dark door in the hall. The center of the gate seems to be the whirlpool of the universe. Seeing this scene, Robin's body trembled, his eyes widened, as if he had a premonition of something, and looked at this dark door with anticipation. This is a shadow, Doflamingo was equally surprised. And the cadres who sat down were confused, and one of them stood up suddenly and berated them on guard. Who? As soon as the voice fell, a dark figure stepped out of the dark door. Demon. Doflamingo opened his mouth and said in shock, It's really you. Hearing this, Ying Yao glanced at the group of people around, and then looked at the two Robins. I haven't come to see Lord Qin Emperor yet. With that said, another person walked out of the gate. Seeing this person, Doflamingo and Doflamingo hurriedly got up, knelt down on one knee, and respectfully shouted, Lord Qin Emperor. What? The people below looked dumbfounded. Is this heavenly Yaksha and the devil's son? Usually these two people are full of majesty. The two leaders who are high above, did not expect to suddenly greet a young man at this moment. Who is this? More than a dozen people peeped at each other, not knowing whether to kneel or continue to sit. 9 years no see, it seems you have done a good job. Qin Yang chuckled and said, Don't be so nervous, Robin. Yes, Lord Qin Emperor. Tell me about the years. This, Nicole Robin said quickly. Since the Battle of Sabayati Archipelago, I have followed the instructions and collected fruits step by step. Most of the fruits that fell in the ocean have been salvaged. Inventory, we currently have 280 devil fruits in our hands. Quote. As soon as she finished speaking, Doflamingo said quickly, Lord Chindi, Marine tried to deal with us a few years after the dream disappeared, so we were forced to set up an army of capable people. At present, there are 50 people in the army. Human scale. Quote. When he said this, Doflamingo was very nervous. There is no way to do this either. The dream has really disappeared, let alone the dominant cadre, even the shadow demon can't be contacted. In this case, in order to protect themselves, they can only rapidly expand their power. Faced with this situation, Marine did not dare to do anything, so the two sides were peaceful. Really, it doesn't matter. Qin Yang said calmly, Robin, go get the devil fruit. Doflamingo, come with me. Hearing this, the two immediately took orders. The dozen or so cadres below looked at each other and all swallowed their saliva. Heavenly Yaksha, who is usually invincible, didn't even dare to take a breath in front of this person. Emperor Qin. Someone changed his mind, then suddenly returned to his senses. Is that the Emperor Qin of One Emperor? The crowd was horrified, and then full of frenzy. Qin Yang was not interested in paying attention to this group of people. Under the leadership of Doflamingo, he quickly left here. Compared with what happened here in the past 9 years, he is more concerned about whether the 280 fruits can raise the space-time fish to a full star. It should be no problem. I hope to be able to travel the world. The combination of time and space of the time-space fish will definitely be able to travel the world. Chapter 0340-Find New Worlds. Under the leadership of Doflamingo, Qin Yang came to a quiet room. When he walked to the sofa, Qin Yang took his seat, while Doflamingo stood respectfully by the side. Seeing how he was about to speak, Qin Yang said, "What do you want to say?" "Lord Qin Emperor, there is indeed something to report to you." After a pause, Doflamingo saw that Qin Yang did not have any dissatisfaction, and then said, "The Shadow Demon ordered me to continue to be Shichibukai, so for the past 9 years, I have followed this order. However, in the past 6 months, Marine seems to have to move my position." Hearing this, Qin Yang nodded. "Who are the Shichibukai now?" "The present Shichibukai has changed a lot from the past." Doflamingo immediately told the side. "The 7 are Heavenly Yaksha, Don Quixote Doflamingo, Hawkeye, Zulokil Mahawk, Tyrant, Bartholomew Bear, Queen, Boya Hancock, Seaman, Jinbei, Gluttonous, Heinel, Eye of the Sky, Vio." Even the little girl of the Empress became Shichibukai. Qin Yang couldn't help shaking his head and had to sigh. At the beginning of the first generation of Shichibukai, the 9-tailed demon fox squeezed out the Shichibukai position of the Empress. In the second generation after that, Marine did not consider the Empress, but 753 chose a role similar to Big Mark. Now that the Big Mark is gone, it is only the Empress. Other words, this is the third generation of Shichibukai. And in this third generation of Shichibukai, Crocodile is gone. Think about it, too. When Crocodile was captured by Dream and displayed to the public, it is obviously not qualified to hold the position of Shichibukai. However, the Empress doesn't matter. Who are Heinel and Vio? Qin Yang asked. Heinel is a fruit swallower who can swallow anything. I heard that he swallowed a warship in one bite. Later, Marine didn't chase him and invited him to join Shichibukai. Doflamingo said disdainfully. As for the Sky Eye, Vio is a Paramesha II fruit ability. I don't know what it is. Marine probably knows it. These two people only became Shichibukai a few years ago. He he he. After listening to the introduction, Qin Yang couldn't help laughing. Marine is really miserable. 7 Wuhai, Doflamingo is his man, Shang is the cadre of the Revolutionary Army, the Empress will not obey orders, Hawkeye is even more arbitrary, that is, the sea hero Jinbei is barely able to instruct. Other than that, besides, there are 2 newcomers. This Shichibukai has almost nothing. Just thinking about it, Robin walked in, behind her, followed by 6 men, who carried 3 boxes and carried them into the room. Lord Qin Emperor, these are 280 fruits. Robin asked someone to open the box, and it turned out to be full of devil fruits. Qin Yang nodded, waved his hand and said, "You all step back." Yes. After a few people left, Qin Yang got up, lightly picked up a fruit, and looked at it for a while. Phantom, scan. Scanning. Scanning is over-discovered mysterious power. The number is 280. Fantasy Jean said, "These are all real." Very well, finally these 2 didn't let me down. Qin Yang nodded with satisfaction, considering how to reward the 2 of them. Subordinates who do well, of course, will be rewarded, otherwise they will not work so hard next time. However, putting this aside for the time being, Qin Yang still has to upgrade the space-time fish first. Huan, how many devil fruits do you need to raise the time fish to 5 stars? Wait a minute. Fantasy Jean was silent for a moment before saying, "It takes about 8 to 12 coins to upgrade from 1 star to 2 stars, then 2 liters of 20 to 24 coins, 3 liters of 4 inches. Wait a minute." Qin Yang's face darkened. "This fish has no fighting power, even if it is a rare transformation, the consumption is too terrifying." "No," Fantasy Jean said. "When I absorbed Yangshu Eve, the time-space fish was only 1 star, which is equivalent to the mysterious power of 40 or 50 fruits. In contrast, the consumption of star raising is not considered big. According to this consumption, to reach a full star, not more than 100. Qin Yang scolded endlessly. "That's because you've been using devil fruits to ascend stars, and the same kind of mysterious power will be weakened." "Forget it, let me think about it." Qin Yang pondered for a moment, then nodded immediately and said, "I'll upgrade to 3 star first and see what abilities will appear." Thinking of this, Qin Yang immediately began to act. Immediately, he put down the space-time fish on his shoulders and manipulated him to absorb 22 fruits. A huge mysterious force poured into the body of the space-time fish, causing it to change rapidly. The first is the increase in size, from the size of 2 palms to more than 1 meter long, and the fish scales are more and more beautiful. At the same time, in my mind, the information about the time-space fish changed. 13th change, time and space fish. Star rating. Ability 1, time is long. Ability 2, space shuttle. Ability 3, time travel. Time wandering. Qin Yang's eyes lit up, he felt it carefully for a moment, and immediately smiled. Sure enough, 3 stars are enough, and 3 stars can travel through time and space. Ability 2 is easy to understand. It is space shuttle, which is similar to the space jump of the Shadow Demon, but the Shadow Demon needs to lock the target before jumping, and the time-space fish can travel directly. Of course, there are still differences. Time fish can travel from East Blue to South Blue in one breath, but it is impossible to travel from East Blue to the back of a specific person in South Blue. As for Ability 3, this is the ability to traverse the world. Time-space fish can enter time-space turbulence. At the same time, this ability can also guarantee that any physical or elemental attack can hit the body of the space-time fish. However, there are still some problems. Qin Yang looked at the larger space-time fish, and was speechless for a while. Although it is possible to travel through the world, after entering the time-space turbulence, I am afraid it depends on luck. Thinking of this, Qin Yang said decisively, "No, it's better to upgrade to 5 star. I need a more precise shuttle method. 3 star upgrade to 4 star, consuming 33 fruits. 4 star upgrade to 5 star, consumes 55 fruits." Qin Yang suddenly felt helpless. These 280 fruits would consume nearly half of them when filling up a space-time fish. The problem is, even if he reaches 5 stars, he doesn't know if the time-space fish will have a more precise time-space shuttle. If you are not afraid of trouble, it is actually available now. The big deal is that the time-space fish enters the time-space turbulence. If you look for it slowly, you can always find a new world. It is not recommended that you continue to ascend to stars. Fantasy Jean actively persuaded. Consuming 80 or 90 devil fruits on it is just a gamble. Of course, if you have other types of mysterious powers, you can try it. You're right. Qin Yang nodded, but still extinguished the idea of rising to 5 stars in one breath. Try it first, and if it doesn't work, upgrade to 5 stars. Go and find a new world. As he spoke, he thought about it, controlled the time-space fish, and activated the ability of time-space roaming. Immediately, there were ripples in the space, and the time-space fish plunged into the turbulent flow of time and space to find a new world.